All right, welcome to the December 17th City of Walnut Creek regular meeting of the City Council. We're conducting this meeting in the City Council chambers. The meeting is being video streamed and can be viewed live or later on the city's website. So right now, why don't you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Stand back up, Martin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, we're on to the consent calendar.
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. Sorry, I'm getting ahead.
Almost.
Almost, I was close. It's not on my list. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devaney.
Here.
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Here.
Mayor Darling.
I'm here. Now we go to the consent calendar. We don't have any presentations or proclamations tonight, so we're on the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull a consent calendar item? Councilmember Silva. I'm having a I'm going to straighten out here in a second.
Yes, I would like to pull items F, I, and P, please.
F, I, and P. Anybody else? I would like to pull item L, so we can talk about that. So now is the opportunity for public comment on any of the consent calendar items that have not been pulled, so not you yet. So A through E.
I rescind my request for I. It was an L. So
It was an L. She's doing L. Okay. Anybody that wants to comment on A through E, G through K, M, N, O, Q, R, S? Seeing no one, somebody has a motion?
Move to approve the consent calendar with the exceptions of F, L, and P.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Devaney.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, so now we're going to go to item 2F, which is the ACFR. Kirsten Lacasse.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And item F is the annual audit or annual comprehensive financial report, which is a tome. So I'm hoping our Administrative Services Director can give us the highlights. In other words, if there was a billboard on Highway 680, what would be on it if we're related to the audit?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Darling, Mayor Pro Tem Wilk, and members of the council. Kirsten Lacasse, Administrative Services Director. So as you all know, the ACFR, or the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, is a set of audited financial statements that reflects all of the city's financial activities throughout the year. And what's most important is the auditor's opinion. And so the city did receive a clean opinion, which is what we all strive for. So that means we have stated our financial statements fairly and in conformance with regulatory requirements. The net position is an indication of a city's financial health, and our net position is $331 million, which is higher than fiscal year 23, so it did increase. So essentially what that means is the city's assets exceeded the liabilities by $331 million, and so we are in a good position. The city's general fund reserves are healthy, and they are funded. They either meet or exceed the council's recommended reserve policy. And if you wanted to see like kind of what those reserves are made up of, page 95 in the ACFR will give you that detail. And then I also just want to mention that if you would like to kind of get an idea of what is in the ACFR in a consolidated fashion, a good place to look is the transmittal, which will give you kind of an idea of what went on throughout the city during the year and an economic outlook. And the management's discussion and analysis really provides a summary of all of the financial statements and a year-over-year comparison and some variance analysis. So you can find a lot of good information there without needing to read through all of the 196 pages.
But it was so much fun. I do have a couple of questions. You said our net position is 331 million. That's assets less liabilities.
Correct. So our assets
So
exceed our
that includes our
liability.
capital assets. So all of the roads, the buildings, the value of the parks, correct?
That's correct.
So we're not sitting on $331 million in cash.
That is also correct, yes.
And our reserve levels meet or exceed our requirements, and that's on page 95.
Page 95, yes.
Do our reserve levels, I look at this, what would you say the reserve levels are, and do they include our pension trust?
If we include our pension trust, we typically don't include the pension trust as part of our reserves because it is restricted for a specific purpose. Our reserves, though, are about 3 months of our general fund operating budget, and the recommended reserve level is 2 months. So we do exceed overall that.
And our reserve levels, which I'm skimming this really quickly,
Approximately 50 million, I would say.
50,
Yes,
and that does not include our pension trust assets, which
Correct.
are about 28 million at this
Correct.
point in time. So, thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment on 2F? With that, I'm open for a motion.
Move to adopt the annual comprehensive financial. Move to adopt the annual comprehensive financial report for 2023-24.
And I will second it because our staff did such a good job. So roll call.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Divini.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next one is item 2L, which I pulled more as a chance to say great job to the staff in getting it to this point and give an opportunity for the soccer club to come up and have their say. And it's 2 minutes.
Hello, Mayor Darlene and City Council and City staff. My name is Steve Chappell. I'm the General Manager of the Walnut Creek Soccer Club, and you can't imagine how excited I am to be here tonight with what is on the agenda. So thankful. I represent 3,000 children in our club, and that means times 2 usually with parents and guardians. And this particular project at Heather Farm and also at Tice will further expand our program offerings. It will allow us to play through most weather events, unlike a couple nights ago when we were stopped because of the rain for obvious reasons. But we're just really thankful for not only leadership of council, but also Kevin Seffi and his staff for getting us to this point and to continue the project into next year and the years forward. You have a strong partner in us. We know we have a strong partner in the city as well, and just really, really excited, but also very thankful and grateful for what you're able to also provide us through your leadership. So again, on behalf of the club, thank you all very, very much, and we really look forward to not only the lights, but also the all-weather turf field.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Silva, did you have any questions?
I do, and I just want to thank you for being here, having been a 6-year member of that soccer
Yeah.
club board, and there was a long conversation about that 25
long time
years
ago.
Yes, you know well.
about what do we do in the winter, and the answer from the field operations director, which was me, was stay off the fields, because you ruin in 1 day or 1 hour, you can ruin a field for months
Right.
going forward. So we're really happy, and thank you for the commitment of the club to raise $1.5 million
1.5.
toward the project. So go forward fast.
We will. We will.
I have a question for staff, actually.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know which staff person is the right person.
Good. Go ahead and ask, and we'll
All right.
figure out who to.
So
answer.
now that we have cobbled together the funds to be able to do this, what's the construction schedule? Boy, I had a multiplicity of people to choose from.
Good evening, Mayor Darling, Pro Tem Wilk and rest of the council members. My name is Michael Hawthorne. I'm an associate engineer and here at the city and the project manager for this job. So the goal is to have the project start early spring and finish by late November, early, so that we can have the soccer club use the field this year. In 2025 when we're done.
So this means that for about 6 or 7 months, the ball fields 1 and 2 will be under reconstruction?
Correct.
Okay. And we're working with the soccer club on how they can schedule for that. I know we are, but it's always exciting until you realize you can't play on a field for 6 months while you wait. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on soccer fields? Councilmember Francois?
Thank you, Mayor. And Michael, I think it's for you too. Thank you. Steve, thank you for being here. Thank you for the club's commitment to making this happen and being a great shining example of a public-private partnership. And for staff, we did get a public comment. I know we've gone out to bid, I believe now, on the project. Can you speak a little bit to the details of the materials that may be used? What kind of base, organic base would be used as part of the turf fields?
So the turf field is made up of several components. One is the actual synthetic turf, and then we have infill materials. The infill material is called a geofill. That's the name that Shaw uses for their product. It's an organic. We're not using any recycled rubber tires for this project. The geofill material is made up of coconut and other natural materials, and then also sand.
Appreciate that. And I think the other question had to do with the life expectancy of the turf and is it any part of it recyclable or what happens at the end of its useful life?
So the life experience of the field is approximately 10 to 14 years with good maintenance. I did check with Shaw. They actually have a program from cradle to grave to recycle the material once it's used as life purpose so that we're not sending it to a landfill.
Excellent. 2 for 2. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate having organic geofill because I sure vacuumed a lot of that out of my car through the years. Anybody want to make a motion on?
I'll be happy to make a motion to approve item 2L. And having coached Walnut Creek Soccer for 16 seasons, I am really happy to see this.
I'll make a second.
Roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk,
Aye.
Councilmember Silva,
Aye.
Councilmember Davini,
Aye.
Councilmember Francois,
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Heck yeah.
Motion carries.
Okay, which brings us to 2P, and this is a question about police radios.
Item 2B is for the funding of the replacement of our digital radios for public safety, and I have a couple of questions.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and rest of the council. I'm Lieutenant Jeff Slater, and one of my collateral duties is Manager of Police Technology, so I'm hoping I can answer some of your questions this evening.
Well, I hope so. As you may know, I sit on the two-county board of the East Bay Radio Communications System Authority. One of the things when we look at the inventory of radios that each of the public agencies has, police, fire, East Bay Parks, that everybody has more radios than the actual police departments or fire departments, and that's because they're in public works and other departments in the organization. This funding, which comes from is primarily coming from the federal government through the COPS grant, funds the replacement of 130 radios. Do you know how many radios in total we have in the system and what we will do about those radios for replacement?
That is an excellent question, and we checked our inventory that goes back about as far back as 15 years. We had 145 radios total. We realized that checking our increased projected staff numbers currently that we are projecting in the future to get like 85 sworn personnel, knowing that we have to take care of our reserve, supplemental staff, support staff members, and when an emergency happens in public works, we need to be able to pass stuff out. We realized we had more than we needed, and we're being good stewards with our money, and we are only needing 130 handheld radios to take care of all of our existing staff, support staff, and we'll still have a surplus left over to help out people such as public works.
Great. Thank you for the answer. Happy to move the item after public comment if there is any.
All right, thank you very much, Lieutenant Slater. Is there anybody that wants to do public comment? or any additional questions? All right, you're relieved. And I think we're ready for a motion.
Move item 2P.
I second item 2P.
Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Silva,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny,
Aye.
Councilmember Francois,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Welk,
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that takes care of our consent calendar, the consent calendar that goes all the way to the letter S. So this brings us to public communications, and as some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek City Council meeting, which it seems like I might be doing, but I've been here a while, I wanted to welcome everybody and talk briefly about the public comment process. For each, there will be an opportunity for public comment on the individual items when we get to those. So if you desire to speak on an item that is actually on the agenda, please hold your comments until that time. And now we're at the part entitled Public Comments, which is for public comments for items not on the agenda. Any comments during public communications should not relate to an item that's on the agenda. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be initially allocated for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the open session portion of the meeting, if necessary. If you desire to provide a public comment, please complete a speaker identification card and line up behind the lectern at the appropriate time. Wait your turn, and then when you approach the lectern, please state your name and city of address for the record. You will have 2 minutes to address the City Council. Please keep in mind that this is a city business meeting. The City Council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure that meetings are conducted efficiently and effectively, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected in the council chambers and can be found on our website. All remarks should be addressed to the City Council. Please do not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. Again, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks, and written comments that were submitted in advance up to 2 hours before the meeting have already been posted for the city's website and for public review, and we have gotten them here on council. So at this point, we'd like to welcome forward anybody that would like to address us during public comment. Please step forward, state your name and address, and
Good evening, Honorable City Council and Mayor Darling. My name is David Harder, and I've lived in Walnut Creek for 37 years. I swam with the Walnut Creek Masters for years until a construction injury ended that happy time in 2005. Expert public comment from Steve Stahl, Masters swim coach with 50 years experience, states he has competed in over 100 aquatic centers nationwide. Each was anchored by a 50-meter pool. They all had dressing rooms without exception. Why has the Walnut Creek Aquatic Federation said nothing about changing rooms? Their long struggle with the city to get a 50-meter pool sized for competition left them with no interest in more meetings. Silence is not agreement, either here or in a court of law. There is still time and budget to add dressing rooms as described in my public comment on November 19th. If the new aquatic center opens in 2027 without dressing rooms, I predict this: swim teams will be unable to host competitions, so Walnut Creek will be the laughingstock of the West Coast and beyond. Now, I did take trouble to reach out to the aquatic community and ask what they did want. As far as I know, that had not happened until then. This is what they want, and you've got a copy of it. They say, swap out the aquatic classroom for the changing rooms. This is the same area, it's the same money. My question for this council is, are you going to talk the talk or walk the walk? This is what they want. Thank you.
thank you.
Questions?
During public comment, we just received public comment, and you can address it to staff. We can have staff meet you outside if you want to talk about it. But we can't take action on things that are not on the agenda.
Although, Mayor, as I recall, we are able to ask questions of staff after the entire public communication as well.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jan Warren from the Woodlands. I just have a few comments on the intersection at Ignacio Valley Road and Oak Grove. My neighbor's two children get on their scooters and go up the foothill and back every day, and I'm sure they're not the only ones using that route. And I understand from a next door post that that's the most impacted accident area in our city, and just wonder what proposals we might consider to make it safer. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Any additional public comment?
Everybody, Brendan Moran. I am speaking to you tonight on behalf of the Community Arts Foundation. If you are unfamiliar, we are a local nonprofit. We help raise money for scholarships so people of all ages can take arts classes at the Center for Community Arts right here in Walnut Creek. What we do is we provide the means for people to take preschool classes, pottery classes, who otherwise would not be able to do so. And in the last couple of years, it's been challenging in the fundraising space, as you can imagine. We've got a shrinking donor base. The cost of living has gone up, so it's been challenging. So I am here tonight with an idea I hope you'll consider, and that is to reinvest a small portion of the Measure O funds in excess into a program which could be used by local nonprofits such as ours to help draw from and petition the city when they need help. Because the money we raise goes directly into the hands of parents who otherwise can't afford it, so their kids can take preschool classes with the city. And for us, a little goes a long way. There's $125 worth of a donation will pay for just a quarter of an entire art class or classes for a senior. $500 donation pays for 2 weeks of summer camps for 4 kids. And $700 pays for, let me get this right, a quarter of an entire preschool year for one student. And this is meaningful because these are local families which need help right in Walnut Creek. So if this is of any interest, I advise you just put it in your back pocket the next time there's money. And I'm happy to be a resource. And if anybody watching at home wants to know more about what we do, it's comartsfoundation.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I already sent my donation for the year end, so. All right. Any additional public comment? Well, thank you all. We are going to close public comment and we'll move on.
And actually, Mayor, if I could just quickly ask, I'm not sure if it would be Mike Vickers or whoever's involved with the pool. I feel like what the comment that we heard from the public regarding dressing rooms, we've heard several times before, but maybe people haven't heard the answer. Oh, great, Kevin. Haven't heard the answer specifically. So could you please just tell us what's happening with dressing rooms?
Sure. For the record, Kevin Safine, Director of Arts and Recreation. Yes, staff addressed this back in September when the council reviewed the design of the pool. This question came up. The answer was yes, there are definitively dressing rooms in the facility, both for men and women. We actually met yesterday with the Aquatic Foundation to go over the final design before they go into construction drawings. They were supportive of the direction for the pool deck, and the dressing rooms. And so, yes, they're a little bit different than what we have today. Today, it's more of a group dressing area. The modern design of aquatic facilities and changing rooms is individual changing spaces, individual showers, and there is still an area where people can change outside of those dressing rooms. And so it is a combination of what we have today and what we have in what a modern facility would have. And so we are confident that the design that we have in place will be successful, will be supported by not just swim teams, but by members of the public.
And they're adequately sized for what we're expecting?
Yes, they are. And the question about should we swap out the classroom for a changing room, that would effectively take away the facility that the swim teams use for meetings, preparation for swim meets, birthday parties, training for our aquatic staff, lifeguards. So staff does not support changing out the classroom for a changing room.
But it doesn't seem like we even need that because we have adequate changing rooms.
That's correct. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may just add to that, I do also want to highlight that staff have had extensive discussions with Mr. Harder about his comments and requests. We've reviewed those, as Director Safin noted, multiple times with our expert consultants. We believe we're on a sound path, and at this point, we're at a stage where we agree to disagree.
Thank you guys all for clarifying that. I think we'll move on now to closed session announcements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There were no reportable actions from closed session this evening.
Thank you. City manager report.
I do not have an update this evening, Mayor.
Okay, that brings it back to us for city council member reports on AB 1234 activities and other such things. Go ahead and start with Councilmember DeFinney.
All right, thank you. Since taking office, I'm not on any assignments right now, so I have attended the Mayor's Conference, which is an organization of mayors and council folks in the area within Contra Costa County, and it was a holiday party, and went there with some of you all, and we had a good time, and I enjoyed meeting other members of the community or the surrounding community and in positions of leadership so that we can work together in the future. Same thing with the East Bay League of Cities. They had a holiday party, and it was nice to meet the folks there. That includes both Alameda and Contra Costa, so a chance for us to collaborate across those county lines as well. One of the openings that just took place is the Hope development down on Tice Valley, Grace Presbyterian Church, and they had a ribbon cutting. And I think many of us were there for that one, and that was a very nice event. I just wanted to speak to that event just a little bit to let the community understand more about that project and why it's important. What they did is, so Hope Solutions is a organization that provides services to folks who are experiencing homelessness. They have recently gotten into the space of building buildings and trying to find housing by the joint effort of both the building process and providing the resources. So what those 3 units there were 7 units there, 6 of them were for living. They're approximately 270 square feet each. And each one will house one person, and it's going to be someone more in the elderly group because of its location. Those are the folks that were chosen. The project cost was $2.5 million, but of that, $850,000 was donated in the form of labor by Polte Development. So a shout out to Polte for their help with that project. It's interesting to look at the cost. So that brings each unit after the donated labor was about $235,000 to build, and that's from scratch. Foundation. They're essentially big kitchens and bathrooms, so typically inexpensive per square foot. But I thought that was a pretty reasonable cost. What those projects will be, what each one of those homes will be, is it will be permanent housing with supportive services. And so what that is when we look at the different needs for housing for folks who are homeless, there's emergency shelter, which is less than 6 months, doesn't provide much in the way of resources, is considered very temporary. Then you can have transitional, which is really trying to move folks from the homeless situation into more permanent housing, and that's over 6 months, and usually within a year or two. And then when we get up to a little more permanent housing, there's a permanent housing with supportive services, and then there's affordable housing. Both of them we're looking to find the folks that take these spaces are paying about 30% of their income to their cost of housing. And what differentiates the two of them is that the services that are provided. So when you have permanent housing with supportive services, you've got mental health counseling there, social services. They can help with food scarcity, all the issues that prevent people from moving from a chronically homeless state into a more permanent housing situation. So when you look at that, it's actually, I think, quite cost effective to pay for those services, because If we don't, these are folks that would otherwise go back to being homeless again if they didn't have the supportive services at their home. So they would be utilizing higher rates with EMS, emergency medical care, jails, emergency psychiatric services. So I thought that was a really great project, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else they can do with Hope Solutions in their housing.
Thank you. That was a great groundbreaking. We'll turn it over to Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Even though it's December, it seems like everyone takes this time of the year to compress everything they would do in a month and to try to do it in 2 weeks. And so many of us have been very busy over the last couple of weeks. Our Recycle Smart board met this month. Recycle Smart is the trash recycling and organics company or agency that represents 6 member cities and the portion of the county. And Councilmember Francois and I are representatives from Walnut Creek on that board. At our recent board meeting, I looked back and thought, boy, were we busy last week. We received a preliminary presentation on the proposed rates that we will be having for the collection of garbage and recycling and organics starting in March, and it looks like all 5 of the cities and the unincorporated area of the county in our agency will in fact be raising rates roughly 7 to 8% starting in March, basically because to cover the increasing costs of fuel and labor. Now, if we have additional funds that are available at the end of the year, which we did at this last year, then those go into our respective reserves. Walnut Creek has the largest reserve levels in our agency, but the nice thing is we've been able to use those reserves when we need to smooth rate increases so they don't come as dramatically at times, but also we've been able to reinvest these reserve monies into recyclable materials and products. So we've used them to be able to purchase shade structures, big belly trash facilities, and also to replace roofs on community facilities and the Shadelands Historic Building with recycled content roofing materials. And so we've had an extra source of funds to basically put recycling funds to work on recycled materials. So you'll hear more about this in the coming months. We also received a report on our 2023 diversion results that we submitted to CalRecycle, the California state regulatory agency. We have a goal that we need to meet 50% of what we collect has to be diverted as recyclable or organics, and Walnut Creek has reached a 64% diversion rate this last year, so we're doing great, but we're looking to be able to do better as we go into the future. And my colleague will have more to report as well, but I have a few other items to cover. The League of California Cities annual meeting of the board and leadership from across the state was just a couple of weeks ago, and we set our goals for 2025. And these are goals that 483 cities in the state of California have agreed to, and were based on the input of people across our leadership of city leaders across the state. So 4 goals. One is to protect local revenues and expand economic development tools. As we go into a change in administrative leadership and some constraints of the state's budget, we are concerned about our own local revenues and how we're going to produce additional revenues through economic development. The second goal is to strengthen climate change resiliency and disaster preparedness. And I will tell you that as we were discussing this goal 2 weeks ago, the 7.0 earthquake in Humboldt County hit. I mean, the lights were shaking and all of that. So it was a reminder that disasters can happen at any point. The third goal is to strengthen and modernize critical infrastructure. That includes roads, bridges, water facilities, and broadband infrastructure. And the fourth is to secure investments to prevent and reduce homelessness and increase the supply of affordable housing. Thank you to my colleagues for the input you may have provided over the fall on those issues. And we look forward to working both at the level of sharing best practices across our cities, across the state, and also to advocating at both the state and the federal level on those issues. The, before we actually had just finalizing our policies and goals for the coming year, we had very interesting presentation from the head of the State Budget Policy Institute on what the state's basically financial situation looks like. The legislative advocates, the LAO's office has assumed about a $2 billion budget shortfall for the state, but that is for 1 year, and that's probably not so bad. Unfortunately, for the years out, beyond that, it could look in the dozens of billions of dollars. But the other distressing news was that to learn how the state's budget is really structured, I'm going to get this right, so I need to look at my notes. A third of the state's budget, which is about $450 billion, comes from the federal government. So as the federal government looks to pull back its funding, we're going to feel it here. And of this $150 billion that comes from the feds, $100 billion of that is actually in health and human services. It's in Medicaid, which is basically supporting 14 million people in this state, 14 out of 40 million people. So that is going to affect our counties, which are the arm of the state to deliver health and human services locally. And it's going to affect all of the cities as well, because we're going to see a shifting of priorities, et cetera. So with that, you can understand why the top goal is to preserve our revenues and look for more economic development tools. I've served for the last year on our local committee of Arts Commission and representatives from the city on selecting the artworks for the Heather Farm Park and Community Center project. And just last week, we have finalized our recommendation that will be going to the Arts Commission in January. We started with dozens of applicants of artists, and with staff's help, it was winnowed to 32, and then we winnowed it to 10, and we interviewed 10, and then we had 5 finalists who actually presented ideas and where the art would go. And rather than picking one artist, we picked 3 separate pieces from 3 separate artists. One would be a mural that would be on the bathhouse changing room wall, so you would see it whenever you enter the roundabout for the community center and the aquatics facility. One would be a lobby in the central lobby of the community center. We would have a hanging art structure that is very beautiful and actually pays homage to California's state flower. And the third piece is a sculpture piece that would be somewhere in the park near the playground and the aquatic center and the volleyball and all of that. So those are moving forward to the Arts Commission at the end of January. And finally, I will mention that we've had the debrief for this year's Community Service Day. We had good results, but we are going to be looking at making some changes because the schools are changing the way they approach their fall calendars, and that's where the crux of a lot of our work for the projects come from, are the schools. So we're going to be doing some work with reaching out to them and gathering more information, and also with the reconstruction of Heather Farm Park in the queue, both first the ball fields and then the aquatic center and the community center. We're going to be a little bit of on wheels so a little more mobile for our central location. And that's happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Councilmember Francois?
Okay. As the former liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, I attended the Chamber Strategic Planning Session meeting on November 22nd. That's the annual meeting that the Chamber Board puts on to do their strategic planning for the upcoming year. It was a great turnout. City Manager Buckshire was there, and we had all the board members, and it was led by a facilitator. We kind of, through a process of voting, we narrowed down the strategic plan focus areas to 4 areas: talent and workforce needs, economic resiliency and capital access, regional and government support, and I can't read my notes on the 4th one. Let's see, growth and expansion resources for scaling businesses. And not surprisingly, I was slotted into the regional and government support focus area, and we had a good, robust discussion among everyone that was there, folks that were commercial brokers to executives with John Muir, about how the chamber can be advocates for streamlining the permitting process here in Walnut Creek. They can provide support on tax issues and business-friendly policies. And yes, you heard that right, that the chamber is interested in being a partner and looking where they can to support tax issues, similar to the positive support they gave for Measure O, which was very helpful to getting that over the finish line, having the business community in addition to the larger community behind it. And in general, simplifying navigating the city and regional requirements. It's not just, you might need a permit from the city, but you'll also need a permit from a utility or maybe from a regional government agency. And so trying to talk and work more seamlessly, not only in the city, but among the various different governmental agencies. So that information now is all being condensed and consolidated. Mayor Darling, I know, will be our new liaison to the Chamber Board, and we'll see this through to completion, and it'll be rolled out in the form of a placemat and implemented at the State of the Chamber event in April. Then as a member of Recycle Smart Board, I also attended our last meeting with Councilmember Silva. And in addition to her report, we agreed to make some minor revisions to the RFP for the collection services. If you've been tuning into my last updates, you'll recall that we've awarded contracts for post-collection services, which are the transfer, the processing, and the disposal, the landfill part where the solid waste goes. That part is done. We've awarded contracts to various different agencies starting in 2027 when our current contracts expire. The next phase is to go through a competitive process to award contracts, probably just one contract, for collection services. And the way that the RFP was structured was focused on transition to zero-emission vehicles and phasing that in over the life of the contract. Given the changes that may happen at the federal level with how California can enforce those zero-emission vehicle requirements, we're providing the option of the traditional zero-emission vehicle route, which we had originally planned for, and then the non-traditional, non-zero-emission vehicle route, which would still likely involve some component of zero-emission vehicles, given our state's strong focus on climate change, but also gives us the flexibility to pivot if what we had originally planned for doesn't come to fruition. I'm also very excited to say that Walnut Creek will be hosting a repair cafe in Civic Park on January 25th from 10 to 1. This had been a successful program that Recycle Smart and Republic Services, our waste hauler, had partnered on with other volunteers in the community and rolled out in the Rossmore neighborhood. And now it's coming downtown and opening to the larger community. And you can there'll be 20 repair coaches. Don't bring shoes or have items that you need to be, heavily altered. It's not that type of repair. Or probably a television, but you can bring small household appliances, jewelry, and clothing. I'm told they will also have a bike repair facility there. So those are the items that you can bring. January 25th, 10 to 1, Civic Park in the Assembly Hall, so right across the street. And then I also just want to shout out to two of our fellow board members who turned off the committee for Recycle Smart. Renata Sauce, six-year council member and former mayor of Moraga, and Inga Miller, former mayor of Orinda, who gave great leadership and were great partners in helping advance our common goals to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Along with Councilmember Silva, I serve on the Housing and Community Development Committee. We met last week to start preparing for the CDBG grant funding, which are funds that we get, community development block grant funds, funds that each city in the state, including Walnut Creek, gets from the federal government and are to be used for certain purposes in terms of helping unmet community needs on housing, homelessness, senior services. So as part of that process, there's a 3-year funding cycle and a 5-year planning cycle. And I'm not sure why they don't match up, but there's also a 2-year funding cycle. So we're going through the process of updating the 5-year plan, which will have to be adopted next year. And in connection with that, we did a community survey, and a lot of the items we got back in terms of data points were a desire to help seniors and persons experiencing homelessness, additional housing services, infrastructure improvements, and facilities for disabled people in our community. A lot of the survey respondents expressed a desire for more mental health services, especially among young people. There's interest in hunger and nutrition program, and then employee assistance programs. And last but not least, so what happens next is we'll take those survey results, we'll fold our information into the larger county planning process for that. The plan will come back to the council in February or April. I think it's one of those days.
January, we see the survey, and then the plan comes back in maybe May.
First quarter next year, it'll get adopted, and we'll start the I know in February we hear the applications for funding. That's right. It seemed a little cart in the horse. So the applications for the funding come in February. The plan is April, but it'll all work out. And then finally, I and many of my colleagues attended the holiday party for the Walnut Creek Library Foundation, which is the nonprofit organization that fundraises for the 2 libraries we have in Walnut Creek that allows for additional books and programs and services that they're not able to provide through the regular traditional county funding process. And so it was hosted at the Ignacio Valley Library, and we were treated to a tour of that library by the head librarian. And she pointed out, many of the really great programs they have going on there, including a homework club. They have laptops for rent and other many various different volunteer activities, which was fun to see that. And I encourage, we often, the focus can be on the downtown library, and we have this other great resource in terms of the Ignacio Valley Library, and I encourage all of you to take advantage of it. That is my update.
Thank you. I will turn over to Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Well, living in that area, it is a highly used library. It does not get the credit for that, for sure. I've seen that for myself. As we heard from Councilmember DeVinny, there was a big grand opening at the Hope Village, but there were 2 other grand openings that same day that are going to be highly impactful for Walnut Creek. The first was Enclave Homes, which opened up in a 1.7 acre lot size where there was 1 home on it previously. It's off of Walnut Boulevard, and there's now 13 new homes for sale right now for new residents. Well, I guess, or current residents that would like to move there. But either way, there are 13 new homes. That was exciting to see. And then I zipped over after all of that to the Family Justice Center South County office that opened in Danville, right next door to Supervisor Candace Anderson's office. And the Family Justice Center helps families that have suffered domestic abuse, domestic violence, especially people that may not have English as a second language, or have English as a second language and speak Spanish or another language as their first language, and they're helped to navigate through the system and working with the county. So it's really valuable. This is the 5th office that's open in the county, and this will serve not just Danville and San Ramon, but portions of Alamo and portions of Walnut Creek as well. So that was a big day of really important openings. For committee assignments, we had the Finance Committee with Mayor Darling, and we brought that forward, recommended that, and we actually just heard about it and approved it during our consent calendar today. And I had the opportunity to have a presentation at the annual Cal City City Clerks Conference, which our 2 city clerks were at. And this was, unfortunately, I know too much about this. but it was titled Hate in the Council Chambers, and how we can work to minimize that, and what are some of the tips to be able to help reduce it and potentially even eliminate it at times. I was on with three other, we had a council member from Pacifica, a city manager from Ventura, and a city attorney who handles 3 or 4 different cities, to really get a perspective of what their experiences were, which unfortunately also dealt with hate in their council chambers, and some of the just ideas that we were able to provide over 300 city clerks from cities throughout California. So I hope it was valuable for the rest of the state. I hope it was valuable and I was accurate, unfortunately, in what we've been dealing with as well. Thank you both for everything that you've done here in helping us get through that as well. Next, I'll actually be presenting this at the annual Cal City City Managers Conference that's coming up in Rancho Mirage in early next year. On this Thursday morning, coming up as on the board for County Connection, we'll be rechristening the administration building of County Connection as the Schroeder Family Administration Building in recognition of the decades of involvement in county transportation public service of Bob Schroeder, former Contra Costa supervisor and former Walnut Creek mayor, and his son Rob Schroeder, a former Central Contra Costa County Transit Authority board member and longtime Martinez mayor. The Schroeder family have had a home in Walnut Creek for over 60 years, and their insurance company operated on Main Street until just a few years ago. The building's one of the oldest buildings downtown, and while still owned by the Schroeder family, is the current home of Telus Coffee. So that christening of the administration building will occur on Thursday at 10:30 a.m. at the County Connection offices in Concord. As the new liaison, as voted on just tonight for the DRAA, I should mention that A Christmas Carol is fantastic, and it runs through December 22nd. Only a few seats are left. For those who haven't seen it this year, this is the best production of the show that I've ever seen, and I've seen it for over 10 years. The special effects are truly magical and amazing. The Chronicle called this the best rendition of A Christmas Carol in the Bay Area, and has been for years. I saw so many families bringing their children of all ages, everyone raving about it afterwards. Great family show. Please go see it. In fact, you should be getting on the website right now and getting tickets for some of the performances that are available. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the downtown menorah lighting will be on Sunday, December 29th. I think it's the 4th night of Hanukkah, in the plaza outside Macy's at Broadway Plaza. And it occurs at sundown, approximately 5 p.m. I'll be there. Any other council members would like to join me, but a lot of the community show up. If you've never seen that, there's singing, there's dancing, there's latkes, there's hot chocolate. It's really it's a great environment and something that's just great to see. So I will be there. I hope I see you there too.
Thank you very much. And I've heard that there's a really especially good cast member in the Christmas Carol that plays Mrs. Fuzzywig or Fezziwig or whatever.
Her last name is Wilk, and she may or may not live in my house.
May or not. Just a couple things. I think a lot of things that I've been to have been touched on, but we did get together with the East Bay Regional Park District staff who are working, and the 2 board members who represent the city of Walnut Creek. They are kicking off their new long-term planning process. And so we got to talk through what we've done as far as sustainability planning, transportation planning, and all the different kinds of planning that we've done in the city and how it can work with East Bay Regional Parks. We'll see more from them as they go forward with their planning effort. I represent the city on MCE, and we did a bunch of retreats and strategic planning to try to get us ready for our next round of budget process, but we got an early Christmas gift. The Fitch organization upgraded the MCE credit rating from BBB+ to A-, which is going to save us some money on our new contracts. They cited the fact that MCE does a great job retaining their customers and providing a service at a very affordable rate. You know, as with it, it's not a monopoly, so people can leave the MCE and go back to PG&E, and we work very hard to keep our clients at MCE. Everybody missed the donor celebration at Lesher, or did we? Somebody said that. Anyway, that was a great one. A chance to get to talk to a lot of folks. And then tomorrow morning, I am going to represent the city because we have the Arts Access performance of A Christmas Carol. So kids from different schools are funded through the DRAA to come and enjoy the Christmas Carol. So that will be a lot of fun. Hope Village, I did want to give it, there's an intersection here when Matt talked about permitting and other agencies. As Hope Village was going forward to get its permits, they went to East Bay Mud, and East Bay Mud said, we don't care that they're only a couple hundred square feet houses. Every one of those needs a water meter. And so one of the last things that John Coleman did before he left the East Bay Mud board was he talked East Bay Mud down off the ledge and got Hope Village to get away with just two water meters instead of having to pay for 10. And a new water meter is not an inexpensive endeavor. I get to do gingerbread houses on Thursday. And I tell you, this being mayor, there's a lot of sugar involved. Last thing, we did hear from the Trinity board that our longtime executive director, Leslie Gleason, is leaving. So we will be having a change in leadership at the Trinity Center. They have been an essential partner to the city of Walnut Creek and are dealing with homelessness. And we wish Leslie Gleason well in her new endeavors, and we'll be looking for a new one. So that is it for all of the wonderful things that we're doing for the city. And now we come to the consideration item, which is the City Council 23-24 Priorities Update. Take it away.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the public, and city staff. My name is Carla Hansen. I'm the Deputy City Manager. And the item before you is the 2023-2024 City Council Priorities Update. The recommended action before you this evening is to receive the update. Back in February 2023, this council set 5 priorities for the next 2 calendar years. And every quarter we come before you and we update you on the work that we've done on your 5 priorities. So we've done that over the last 2 years, and this will be your final update on these 5 priorities as the council is going to come together on February 11th in 2025 and set new priorities. So my presentation to you this evening will go through each of these priorities and update you on what we've completed since your last update, which was in June. And then did want to highlight that all of the accomplishments under these 5 priorities are attachment 4, are recorded in attachment 4 of your for this item, and also linked on the city's website for the public to peruse at their leisure as well. So as always with this presentation, I will go through each priority and then I will pause for questions. And although I'm the sole presenter this evening, we do have department directors here and city staff to answer your questions. So beginning with diversity, equity, inclusion, this priority is focused on continuing to build an inclusive and welcoming community. And we've been focused in 7 areas, and so I'll update you on a few highlights that we've accomplished since June. City staff began working with Ready Set to help build and create a comprehensive DEI-B program, and we started that work in March. Ready Set did a comprehensive survey of city staff, including focus groups, to really understand where our organization was in the process of change and becoming more inclusive. Those survey results were presented to city staff in December, and some of the highlighted results of the survey were that employees really feel proud to work for the city. They feel that they understand how their work contributes to the city's mission and the overall improvement of the community. And they feel that working for an organization that upholds a strong culture of DEI-B is something that they're very interested in and are proud of for the city. In addition to that, Ready Set also recommended some next steps, which include developing a DEI-B strategy and really focusing on leadership and decision-making and communicating the why around those things, talent management, and culture and engagement. And these findings will also be helping develop a welcoming resolution that will be coming to the council in 2025. The city hosted a number of events to reinforce its commitment to DEI-B in the community. Pride, June was Pride Month, and we celebrated with 6 different Pride events throughout the community. And then in July, 7,000 community members attended a Fiesta Cultural. This is a Latin American arts and culture celebration that included performances by local artists and nationally recognized artists, and then also had an all-day street fair with local vendors. And then, of course, we also had our 5th annual Trunk or Treat at Civic Park that included a Dia de los Muertos celebration alongside all of our Halloween activities. On the employee side of things, our Rising Tide team, which is a group of employees that are focused on inclusion and belonging in the workplace, hosted their 2nd annual book club and organized an exhibit to display the range of city staff and family histories that is on display in our 3rd floor hallway. If you haven't seen it, is very moving and very, very engaging. That team also continues to implement the chosen name policy and is also working on researching language translation services and enhancing transparency around our employee leave options and benefits. And our Arts and Rec department is working with Rising Tide to continue working together on sensory inclusive spaces throughout the city for both the public and city staff. And with that, I will pause for questions.
Does anybody have questions on the DEIB?
Let me ask her a question.
Commissioner Silva, Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much, Carla. So we have 5 goals, and you're going to cover all of them tonight, but I think I'll ask my first question, and then you can figure out how to address it each time. Many of these goals are very broad. They're very aspirational. They have a lot of moving parts and a multiplicity of sub-goals. Would you say that it's even feasible that any of these goals can be accomplished in a single 2-year time span?
I'm thinking. I would say a lot of these goals, a lot of the initial work that needed to happen on these goals, planning, creating strategies, et cetera, have been completed, but then it's really implementing those plans. So I would say the work becomes ongoing or operational in nature after the 2-year period.
So in this one space, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, would you say that there's anything that still is part of the work in progress, not a planning stage, but are there some things that we're still working on to try to get done? And what would those be?
I would say our DEIB, the recommendations from Ready Set was to create a DEIB strategy in our organization. So that is something that we will be working on and continuing to work on. Also, I think some of the DEI efforts that we have started in the last 2 to 3 years have become part of the walls, if you will, of City Hall. And so those things are going to continue over the next couple of years.
And I'll probably ask you the same question about each of the other 4, which is, you know, we've accomplished a lot, but what else might still be remaining in the next 6 weeks?
All right.
Thank you.
Sure, the staff heard that question too.
Councilmember Francois.
Yeah, following up on Councilmember Silva's question, and maybe it's part of this plan that we're going to be developing with the consultant's help on training, ongoing training. I'm kind of interested in what the schedule would be for that and what sort of topics. I know we all had implicit bias training, and then it seemed like new staff members and new commissioners got that as well. But building on that as a base, kind of what would some of the future training topics be, and when would we likely see them?
I'm going to have our HR director come and answer that question.
Mayor Darling, Mayor Pro Tem Wilk, I'm not used to this microphone here, and council members, good evening. And to answer your question, we do have some additional trainings in the lineup for 2025 that have been indicated as next steps as part of the recommendations by Ready Set. And those are inclusive people management, and that is for managers and supervisors and department heads, and interpersonal bias and allyship, and that is for all staff. Additionally, we will continue to provide foundational DEIB training to commissioners, and all new staff members.
Is there anything else for us as a council to participate in?
Not as indicated in our next steps.
Okay.
At this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually, I'll ask a question. I think this is playing off a little bit of what we heard from Councilmember Silva, but just because we have had this priority for 2 years, any of these priorities for 2 years, doesn't mean that that work ends. I mean, if they're not a priority, it's like if homelessness is not a priority, homelessness is not over. We've done our job, right?
Yeah.
So these are things that we continue to work on throughout.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
All right. Let's go ahead into the next one.
Let's jump right into economic development and job creation. This priority has 4 different elements, and I will be updating you on updates since June. Our Economic Development Action Plan is a 2-year plan with strategies to promote economic diversification and capitalize on the city's strengths. We've had some staffing changes in our Economic Development Division, but good news, we will have a new Economic Development Manager starting in January 2025, and we're all very excited to see them start working here and getting their hands right into economic development. Since June, we've completed the adoption of the Shadelands PBID annual report. And we continue ongoing collaborations with the Chamber of Commerce, Walnut Creek Downtown, and our other local associations, as well as our real estate community and our business community, and continue to strengthen partnerships with our local businesses and organizations. The focus of our permit streamlining goal is really to improve the development permitting processes to make it easier and more understandable for our customers. Staff provided a development services update to the council in September that included outcomes in areas of customer service and process improvement and collaboration and problem solving on our development services team. Also in September, the non-residential standards and guidelines were adopted by the City Council, which helped really clarify the process of design review, which was part of our permit streamlining goal. And then kicked off in October was an update to the city's sign ordinance and process. If you've been downtown in the last year, you'll know that Locust Street was under construction, mostly by our Contra Costa Central Sanitary District in East Bay Mud District that was replacing aging utility infrastructure. We leveraged this construction to go in behind them and complete some paving work, some streetscape work, and traffic safety improvements. And we held a ribbon cutting in November to reopen the street, new and improved, as you can see in these photos. And with that, I will pause.
Questions? I think we're happy.
Same question. What's still to be, where are we in the streamlining, et cetera? Because I know there's a lot of great programs and plans in the works, and maybe we can summarize a few of them.
I can tackle that. There's a lot left to do. So, the Economic Development Action
Don't
Plan.
abandon this quite too soon.
Yeah. The Economic Development Action Plan is at best, halfway through from a timeline perspective. There's a considerable number of actions if you look at the attachment that's in the part of the staff report. And in addition, in terms of, streamlining with permits, we've made some headway, but there's considerable work yet to be done.
And I would just want to acknowledge that I see some representatives of Walnut Creek Downtown here, and I thank them for their involvement in this and for their input and participation.
Other questions on economic priority? All right, moving right along.
Moving into environmental sustainability and climate action. This council adopted the Sustainability Action Plan in July 2023, and since then we have been working to implement that plan for you. But we paused to accept an award in 2024, the Beacon Spotlight Platinum Award, where we were recognized for sustainability best practices, and I think more importantly, our long commitment to sustainability and a focus on really reducing greenhouse gas emissions and being resilient. The council has had that mindset for a long time, and sustainability has been a priority for the city for a number of years. We participated in a number of community events, including a very popular building electrification fair at Calicraft. I won't go into too much detail about the repair cafe that's coming up in January because Councilmember Francois talked a lot about it, but our sustainability staff who's here tonight is very excited about it. So coming in 2025, what's left of sustainability? A number of big things. So we've got the electric vehicle strategic plan, which really is going to focus on what level of electric vehicle infrastructure, chargers, et cetera, do we need throughout the community. That includes our city fleet, that includes publicly available chargers for the community, and that also involves chargers at multifamily housing. So this plan is really going to assess where we're at currently and then where we're going to need to go. Again, both on the charger side and the infrastructure side, because you can't just plug in chargers with no utility connected to it. The other major plan that we are committed to through the Sustainability Action Plan is our gas leaf blower ban, which in the SAP we committed to implementing this within 3 years of adoption of the SAP, Sustainability Action Plan. So we will be kicking that off in early 2025. This will include a lot of community outreach, a lot of research of our fellow communities that have already banned gas leaf blowers, and also expanding the use of electric leaf blowers with our city, I don't want to call it fleet because it sounds like a car, but our city equipment as well, which we're already using electric leaf blowers in our downtown, but expanding that throughout the rest of the city. And then coming up also is really looking at opportunities for REACH codes in the building electrification space, because we will have a new building code in 2026. So we'll be working with our community development department and building division to really start thinking about what do REACH codes look like for us in electrification going forward. So I hope I answered your question in advance.
Yes, you may ask it again if you're so.
We had a heavy lift in the last 2 years with the adoption of our Sustainability Action Plan. Is it on the docket in 2025 to give us an update on where we are on those action steps?
We were just talking about this internally. We will be updating the council on kind of a comprehensive update of what have we accomplished, where are we at. I think also doing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory to see how our actions making progress to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Best practice is to do that every 5 years. We're coming up on a 5th year, so we're also looking at that, and that would be coming to you as well.
Just a side note, at the opening of the Family Justice Center, Renee Zeimer, who used to be on our staff, was there, and she said she just found in her notes or something that she was cleaning out at home all of the original notes from the original 2012 Sustainability Action Plan, or Climate Action Plan. I guess if you want them, we can connect you.
I'm impressed by her records retention process.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Thanks, Carla. We've had a lot of issues with PG&E when it comes, well, not just outages, of which unfortunately I live in one of these prime areas that love to have outages, but we also have heard from businesses and nonprofits, whoever it is, whoever opens up a front of any sort, that it takes a while to get PG&E to be able to electrify things. So here we are with these chargers, and this is all part of our plan, and we've got RENA numbers, and we're building multifamily housing. So what's our confidence level that PG&E can meet what we need and approve? And this is probably a question that maybe none of us can even answer. So I would ask if the next time we have an update of priorities, especially when it comes to sustainability, if we can get an idea of the confidence PG&E has of meeting the same goals that we are being expected to meet ourselves.
Yeah, and if I could just speak to that, just so you have a sense of what's been occurring, certainly we can attempt to do that. The timeliness of connections and the ability to provide power is a big concern throughout PG&E's service area. It's something that the city managers have discussed amongst the various cities and have raised the issue. Chambers of Commerce have highlighted these issues, as have other business advocacy groups. So it is being identified. There's attempts to obviously influence a better outcome, but it is a notable concern. Absolutely.
And I'll add on to that, from the MCE perspective, that is one of the legislative priorities this year because it affects the grid, both in hooking the customers up, but also bringing the new supply in. There are grid reliability issues at both ends. One of the things that we have to look at very carefully before we sign a new contract for power is, can they get it on the grid, and can they get it to us? So it's something that's top of mind for a number of different perspectives.
Well, considering that the state has what the governor has signed and the state mandates, that's all fine and well, but we have to be able to do it from the ground up too.
Other sustainability questions? Thanks. Moving on.
Moving on to parks, facilities, and other infrastructure. These are our three major Measure O infrastructure projects. Measure O is funding a number of initiatives and programs and services. These three are our infrastructure projects. It is not hyperbole to say that Heather Farm Park, the Aquatic Center Community Center build, is the largest project the city has undertaken or will be undertaking in the last 25 years. So although there is one slide in this presentation focused on these infrastructure projects, don't let that fool you. Staff is very focused on these three projects, but our Heather Farm Aquatics and Community Center, you all approved the design development package in October 2024. So what comes next? We will be putting together construction documents, doing plan check, and getting ready to do a pre-qualification and bidding through the spring and summer of 2025, and getting ready to start construction in 2026. Which means we will be under construction through 2026 and 27 on this project, as we will also be under construction with the lights at Tice Field, the ball fields at Heather Farm Park as well. So I think as a community impact of these infrastructure projects, and if you're thinking about how the community is going to experience this, Heather Farm Park is going to be under construction for the next 2.5 years or more. So I think this is a major component of your priorities, and this will continue past the next 5 years. The lights at Tice Field, we're expecting to start that construction in early 2025. And as I mentioned at the ball field, you all approved the construction contract just earlier this evening. So we're hoping to complete that project in fall 2025, as our associate engineer, Mike Hawthorne, said to us.
Any questions on infrastructure? Yes, you may ask your question.
That slide was so complete, I don't have a question.
Wow.
And let me just say, I don't have a question, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're actually going to do it. So, yay. We're going to be really busy. You guys are going to be really busy. We're going to be really busy. Moving on.
Your final priority is public safety and social wellness, and there are 5 components to this priority that include new and existing programs related to public safety. So I will go through again the highlights from June. The A3 program is a program that Walnut Creek was instrumental in advocating for and instrumental in developing. Anyone in Contra Costa can access timely and appropriate behavioral health crisis services anywhere and any time. A3 has a dashboard that is available to the public. These are just a few highlights from that dashboard. You can see here that calls for service countywide, 4,500 calls just in 2023. And A3 screened 686 Walnut Creek calls since that time. I think the largest data point on this slide is the lower right quadrant here, where we had Walnut Creek PD took in 331 5150 involuntary psychiatric hold calls for adults experiencing mental health. So this is a 72-hour hold of someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis. They're taken by a police officer, a law enforcement officer. So we had 331 calls in 2021. Over the last 2 years, those have steadily declined because of A3. So instead of calling law enforcement and having to get services in that way, folks who are calling are getting services, getting the right services, and law enforcement is freed up to do other calls. So I think this is a huge testament to the A3 program, to Walnut Creek's advocacy and development of this program, and you can see it in the numbers. And because of the effectiveness of A3, this slide you've seen a couple of times used to have 3 bubbles and included the regional crisis prevention team, which included Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, and Martinez. We have disbanded that team because A3 has kind of taken its place. However, our officers remain highly trained to de-escalate and respond to calls that include persons with mental health crises. And also, we are still instrumental in the core program, and of course, our homeless outreach program, our HOP team, still operates within the city as well, connecting folks who need mental health services to services, and also folks who are experiencing homelessness to services as well. Our police department remains proactive in its responses to crime trends. They implemented Peregrine, a technology that provides real-time analysis of crime trends to help support staff as they direct law enforcement resources. We also deployed a traffic officer to weekend downtown nightlife activity with a focus on DUI enforcement, just in case people were having too much fun. And then in September, the police chief provided a public safety update to council on crime trends and statistics. One of those crime trends was organized retail theft, and unfortunately it is still an issue in our city, but a main focus of our police department. And one retail target is accounted for 60% of retail theft. However, our police department has been encouraging businesses, including Target, to report more, to call more, so we can prevent theft, respond to theft in a proactive manner. And throughout the fall, our police department and partner agencies conducted focused operations, their words, blitz, to arrest shoplifters and address organized retail crime. And these 2 operations resulted in 16 arrests. Partnerships are very important to our police department, and they continue to host Coffee with a Cop, most recently in the Palos Verdes Mall and in Rossmore. They are also participating in crime and safety forums in Rossmore and contributing monthly articles to the Rossmore News about public safety tips and answering residents' questions. We're also focused on improving public safety through improved traffic, transit, and pedestrian and bike safety. And we're doing that by incorporating traffic safety elements into all the projects we do, including the ones that we complete over the summer. Some of those include bulb outs, striping, improving sidewalks, reduced travel lane widths, etc. We did this through our Slurry Seal project, crosswalk through Creekside Drive, on Creekside Drive, and crosswalks in Shadelands. And with that, I will pause for questions.
Public safety? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. That was terrific. And I will say that from the residents, I get more questions about the topics that you raised here than anything else, probably combined. So what I'd like to do, and thank you to, I see several of our Walnut Creek PD here, including the chief. Thank you for all that you're doing in keeping people safe, especially during the holiday season. What I'd like to do is give you the opportunity, if you so choose, to tell us about one of the success stories when it comes to the organized retail theft. We hear about the crimes, goes all over Nextdoor, social media, and we rarely hear about the successes. And so what I'd like to do is, if you feel comfortable in talking about one of these successes, let's get it out there. Let's let the residents know that you guys are really doing your job.
Just one success?
You can talk as long as you want, Chief.
Okay.
No.
I won't,
I can say
promise.
that because I'm not the mayor yet.
Good evening, Jamie Knox, Chief of Police. I think we've had a lot of success just in the fact that we're arresting more people. So our retail arrests have gone up significantly over this past year, and to Carlos' point, we have been encouraging our partners, our commercial partners, to call us more often. If you remember a few years ago, there was almost an apathy when it came to shoplifting. People just kind of shrugged their shoulders, thinking that nothing would happen anyway if they called, or they didn't want to be featured on a news broadcast of, a police interaction with a shoplifter. That sentiment has now changed, and we're arresting a lot more people. So I think we've had a lot of successes.
Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
So Proposition 36 was overwhelmingly approved by the state voters in every county. I mean, people were almost I think the state legislature reports that they were stunned. What do you see as the biggest impact that could have going forward?
It's a great question. So there's really 4 major components that the public would probably want to be aware of. The first one is prior to the passage of Prop 47 several years ago, if somebody committed a petty theft and they had a prior conviction with at least 1 day served in jail, we could take them to jail and charge them with a felony. That went away, so ultimately what we've seen over the past several years is people who are repeat offenders, and if they're stealing merchandise and that merchandise does not amount to more than $950, then we have to issue them a citation. We can't physically take them into custody and book them unless there's other mitigating factors. So under the new law, if they commit a petty theft and it's under that dollar amount and they have 2 prior convictions for a theft crime or related offense, then we can now book them. The other change is if they're working in concert with 3 people or more to commit an organized retail theft, then they can be charged with a stricter felony. There's another clause that brings back drug court. Now, if somebody is arrested for a substance abuse problem and they go before a judge, they can be, I'll use the word prescribed, drug treatment by the judge. And then if they successfully complete that program, their conviction goes away. So I think that, I know that they gave a lot of the public some concern that we're creating a different pathway back into the justice system and undoing completely what was done with Prop 47 and AB 109, but I think this is a good alternative. And lastly, now it's up to the courts to admonish people who are drug dealers that if they continue that behavior and they were to provide narcotics to somebody who overdosed and then subsequently died, they could be charged with murder. And that law goes into effect at midnight tonight.
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 Okay, everybody, you're on warning.
So Santa's watching. Be good.
Is there something in Prop 36 also related to retail theft across county lines and how there was some barrier before?
There was a whole slew of laws that were passed. I believe that was one of them. Yeah, stricter penalties if there's.
And somehow the DAs can collaborate and.
Correct. Yeah, usually, so we deal with, we're no stranger to regional crime just because Walnut Creek is such a destination place. So we deal all the time with crime sprees and we leave it up to the DAs to work that out. But the passage of this new law makes it a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Francois.
So Councilmember Silva asked my questions about Prop 36, and these more detailed ones, you can take them, Chief, or if you want to phone a friend and have one of the captains come up. But basically, first interested in the regional crisis intervention training, and I know that regional kind of collaborative group has gone away, but maybe you can speak to the training the officers go under for dealing, when an officer needs to be at the scene of someone suffering a mental health crisis, kind of what training our police department is offering.
Sure. Maybe I will phone a friend and give one of the captains an opportunity, or we actually have one of our mental health certified sergeants here tonight. He's pointing at you, Lieutenant. I'll have Lieutenant Slater come down. I'll bail the captains out. They owe me one.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council again. Lieutenant Slater here to answer your questions. I happen to also be an instructor at the Law Enforcement Training Center, and I do teach LD Learning Domain 37 at the Police Academy, which is police response to mental illness and people with disabilities. So I take that training and structure and remind our staff, who I've taught many of them when they were in the academy, of daily interactions with people that are in need. We were talking about Sergeant Davis, who's in the back of the room, because he's also the other instructor. So I'm very proud that I know that Walnut Creek is the hub of this type of structure collaboration in terms of teaching our staff, not just in our city, but across the county from the foundation of when they start their law enforcement career. All of our staff attends additional training annually. in about an 8-hour block on crisis intervention training. And then our field training officers even get more, which is about 32 to 40 hours of additional training to make sure that when they are doing hands-on training with their patrol staff, they are able to identify someone that's in a crisis and then how to best resolve that situation.
I appreciate it. Is it fair to say then kind of at any given time, 24/7, we have officers on staff that are trained and equipped to dealing with someone suffering a mental health crisis?
That is absolutely correct. In addition to our regular staff, we do have several members of our department that are considered crisis negotiators. They are assigned to our SWAT team, and they are trained with even additional training with, let's say, members of the FBI. And they are taught, again, how to deal with people in crisis and how to address those persons' needs and try to get them additional resources. Over the years, we have had additional training for other officers that are assigned to specific positions that are dealing more likely with people in having type of issues or special needs. That would be our in-house community with our members of HOP, our Homeless Outreach Program, and they also receive additional training just like our field training officers.
Great responses. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Slater. Thank you for the leadership role that you've taken with training other officers. We all are benefiting from that.
Thank you.
My only other question had to do with another frequent topic at the farmers market booth, which is on traffic safety and sort of kind of our traffic safety plans, pedestrian and bicycle safety, speeding and unsafe driving maneuvers. What's our enforcement efforts out there now, and is there any room for improvement?
Great questions. And for the record, Lieutenant Slater is the traffic commander, but
I thought for sure I was going to get one of the captains.
I will take this one because it is a hot topic. No, we are slowly growing our ranks back up to where they need to be. And as if you remember, this council funded 5 additional police officer positions. We're still hovering right around 80, give or take. It seems to change depending on the day. But we're also committed to growing our traffic program and our traffic unit. So we are losing 1 member due to a retirement. So we will be recruiting for a couple of new traffic officers over the next couple of months. But right now we're still taking a very responsive approach where we're very complaint driven. So as complaints come in either through your council or other city staff, or they come across my desk, we track all of the complaints and we triage everything. I know we've had some significant accidents that somebody had mentioned earlier on Ignacio Valley Road. I know that's a major concern, so we're going to try to get some extra enforcement out there, especially through the holidays. But you will continue to see high visibility enforcement. You also may be aware that we secured a grant through the Office of Traffic Safety for $50,000 for enforcement, everything from distracted driving to DUI enforcement.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
Appreciate all your hard work.
So my questions, I think Matt already got that one. On the pedestrian safety, e-bikes and electric scooters and young adults, what are you guys doing there to help them grow up and wear helmets?
I'm going to turn this one over to Lieutenant Slater because that is very nuanced, and we have like flow charts and cheat sheets because the laws are kind of across the board depending on what type of device you're on and how old you are.
Hello again. The simplest answer I can tell you is that our traffic team is currently educating themselves to make sure they're not missing out on any of the laws because they keep changing. And we're going to be messaging out to our officers so our regular patrol staff can deal with these issues. One of our newest traffic officers, Ryan Pastor, actually just addressed this on like a Zoom web call training for the students at Foothill Intermediate. That way they were able to be educated like, hey, you want to ride a new bicycle? We all get it. In the holidays, maybe it's on your Christmas list. But when you use an e-bicycle, it's very easy to be driving riding way faster than you would if you were pedaling it. And parents want to go and get their kid their most favorite, bestest item out there, right, for the holidays. Well, there are bikes out there that if parents aren't aware of what they're buying, they could actually be buying an electronic motorcycle, and you cannot get on one if you do not have a license and a helmet. And a lot of people are not aware of that. So you can rest assured that our traffic team will be doing education to not only our schools, but on our social media to give people some type of cheat sheets so they can be aware of what to look for. I wouldn't be surprised if that's up sooner than later for the holidays.
That would be a good thing, because I've seen some people, it's like, that is not a bicycle, that is a motorcycle, and you are way too young for that.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Actually,
Go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just, on that note, is there a requirement for people that are riding e-bikes to wear a helmet?
So it depends on what class it is, and I don't want to give bad information because I don't have the notes in front of me, but that will be on our social media page shortly that will explain what is a Class 1, a Class 2, a Class 3, and what the requirements are. Thanks.
Thank you.
On that topic too, what are the speed limits on these? I mean, how fast are you allowed to go on these electric bikes before it becomes?
It's an excellent question, and that does vary by the manufacturer and then what classification it is. You can rest assured that most electronic bicycles range in the 20-mile-per-hour range, but if they are modified or they buy the souped-up ones, I forget what it's called, they could range to basically freeway speeds, and that's what makes it so concerning. Most of the ones out there that you see kids buy are going to be in the 20s, and if you are in that range, you should be wearing a helmet, regardless of your age, just because it's safety out there, being out there with traffic. Obviously, if you're underage, if you're 18, you have to wear a helmet, regardless of whatever type of device that you're on.
And is it illegal to travel over a certain speed on these bikes, or is that just governed by the speed limits of the streets?
That at this time, it's currently going with whatever speed limit is posted on the street, but there are places where you cannot operate these motorized vehicles regardless because of the status. As I was mentioning, the one that's called an electronic motorcycle, that is very easy to misread, and if someone is on it, they're not even supposed to have that on the road unless they have the proper requirements, and because it's a vehicle, it's not even supposed to be on our trails. It's going to be a lengthy education.
I sense
piece on
some
social media.
education in our future.
Yes.
So, and you can't go on sidewalks and go 30 miles an hour.
That is
Please,
correct.
tell me that.
That is 100% correct.
No wonder our pedestrians are worried about their safety.
We've been seeing these with not only the electronic bicycles, but as you know, we've been seeing those with scooters. Bottom line is scooters shouldn't be on the roadway. They're great for pathways downtown and on trails, but definitely not, and it's supposed to be on our roads.
Thank you. Now we'll switch over to homelessness. I'm making eye contact with Jamie, but he's looking at you. I know that some of the adjacent larger cities around us have changed their encampment policies, and that has created some challenges, particularly at Trinity Center and other places that are servicing the homeless. How do you anticipate that playing out this year?
You got it.
Well, right now, we're not changing any of our policies. We're still approaching the unhoused population as we have in the past. We are continuing to monitor our populations. I mean, without a point-in-time count, we don't really know definitively how many folks are here, especially overnight. It's just more anecdotal. But I would like to announce that next week, for the first time in a couple of years, just because we've had somebody who's been out on a long-term leave, we are filling our second homeless outreach officer position. So it'll be a two-person team now. They're much more effective because they can work together. They don't require backup. And hopefully they'll be twice as efficient at connecting people with services and just keeping tabs on everybody to make sure we keep everybody safe. But right now we have no plans of changing how we do business.
Okay, and then as far as operations at places like Trinity Center, I know tonight we approved the winter shelter over at the Armory. Are you guys changing the level of service you're providing in those homeless services?
Not necessarily, but we have a very good relationship with the staff at the Trinity Center, and they know they can pick up the phone anytime. They have many of our direct lines and email addresses, and we'll come running if they ask for help.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
If I may, Mayor, just add to that a bit. In addition to the work that our PD has been doing, we are having discussions, the chief and I, with nearby cities, and more specifically with Concord, Pleasant Hill, and Martinez, coordinating regionally and also discussing with the broader city managers group as well as the county, with obviously the grants pass decision that occurred this summer at the U.S. Supreme Court. As you noted, some of the larger cities in the region displacing encampments that have been more prevalent and what that means. And the goal is not to just move unhoused individuals around, but to coordinate to try to get folks services so they get off the street and can get some help. And so that's the goal, and that's what we are attempting to do, so that folks are not just moving from spot to spot.
So thank you for that explanation, because that's what I was hearing at our state board meeting, that Eureka was talking about Oakland busing, giving people homeless bus tickets and sending them to the beaches in Eureka, and other cities are noticing it's not just floating sub-regionally. And are we experiencing any of that, and is it becoming a problem in the evenings?
Well, a few months ago, I think we did see, just more anecdotally, a little bit of an influx of our unhoused population, but that has shifted again. So it changes by day. I haven't been made aware of any influx recently, but it's something we can keep an eye on.
Thank you. Thank you for all you guys do, and we'll turn it back over to.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Moving from your priorities to major work that the staff has been undertaking that are not necessarily priorities for you, but things that are taking up a lot of time and are very important and very impactful for the city and the community. One of those things is the housing element implementation. Our housing element was certified last October, actually October 2023. And since then, we have been implementing the numerous policies and programs that are within that housing element. You have seen our senior planner staff here doing a lot of different land use changes, programmatic changes that are all related to the housing element that is not necessarily captured here, but is something that you all are experiencing at your council meetings. Good news, the city did receive a pro-housing designation from the state, which opens us up for funding incentives and additional resources to speed up housing production. We held a housing developer forum, in October, which was the first that we've done. And really what that did was promoted our housing opportunity sites and promoted best practices to support the construction of affordable housing. Something that you'll see coming in 2025 is how our housing element connects with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's transit-oriented communities policy, and whether it's connected or we need to connect it, we need to change our policies to connect it so that we are eligible for funding and we are in compliance with that policy. The becoming general plan ready was something that the council directed staff to do back in February 2023 when you set your priorities. Our general plan was adopted in April 2006. So it's in need of an update, which you all told us, and you said it's time to get ready to do that, spend the next 2 years getting ready for it. A general plan update is one of the largest undertakings of a city. We analyze what it would take for us to do this. It's estimated to take about 4 years to complete and estimated to cost over $3 million. And that $3 million number does not include city attorney fees and staff time. So that's consultant fees, that's outreach. This is a huge undertaking and something that it becomes the footprint of the city, the blueprint for the city for years to come. So staff has been doing that work. We've researched and lots of resources gathered and analyzed baseline data that's needed for this project. And I would say we're general plan ready, knowing that it is going to be a large undertaking for our city staff, especially in community development, but also throughout our organization. Happy to take questions.
Questions on this part? I think we're all good. Thank you very much, and thank you for responding as we go along. I think we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment now. Anyone? No public comment? Oh, come on up, Jan. You were looking like you were ready to go.
Why don't you sit down? Wow. Good info tonight. Thanks, Jan Warren, The Woodlands. 39 years and counting. I just wanted to highlight the climate action, the sustainability plan. And highlight, I go to a lot of BACMed meetings and keeping up with them and working with them closely. And so the Regulation 9, Rule 6 of nitrogen oxides that are going to require, we switched to heat pumps for our water heaters. There's been a lot of good movement. A lot more manufacturers have come on board, more plumbers are trained, and so the board has decided to continue that their target that come January 1, 2027, if your unit goes out, then you need to do something different. And my concern, both at listening to those at the meeting from the dais and from the people who attended a couple of meetings on this, is that we really need to begin to start educating the board. The BACMed had originally thought, oh, well, 6 months. Then everybody's saying, no. You need to get started now on educating people. And I went out and looked at all of this on our website and so forth. And it would be helpful to get resources from BACMed. Our supervisor is on the air board, Ken Carlson. There's a lot out there, and it's changing rapidly. It's very difficult to stay up with. But people need to know there's not only loaners, but they need like a button you go to and says, here's, all I saw out there was MCE stuff. There's a lot of other stuff. There's state, there's federal, so I would appreciate what's moving on education. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Any other public comments? Bring it back to council for any closing comments. Councilmember Silva, you analyzed this all and you have.
So I'm going to start by thanking staff for all of the work that has occurred on these 5 priorities over the last almost 2 years. And I also want to acknowledge and recognize that the work is not done. And like so many goals that you establish in year 1, you can't finish everything in 2 years. And so I will look forward to our discussion on February 11th on what we still want to stay focused on and what are we going to pick up the ball on the general plan, which is a huge undertaking. I think a few of us might have been involved 20 years ago. And it's a misnomer to call a general plan that's 20 years old an update, because that implies, or you would imply that it's just a few redlined marks, and everything is interrelated, and you have to do a lot of careful analysis as you look at changing our focus. So I look forward to the conversation on February 11th.
Thank you. Councilmember Francois.
Thank you, Carla, for an amazing report. Thank you to all the staff that has helped implement these important policies that the council identified. Just ticking through each of them and some observations or thoughts on diversity. I am interested in whatever plan is being developed, that it does include a council component for additional training resources, that we're not left out of that, and the commissioners too. I think that's important. And I applaud the work. I appreciate how diverse you're being about diversity in terms of the sensory inclusion that the council's doing, or the city's doing out at Shadelands and did with some recent events. On economic development, I agree with the city manager. I think there's still work to be done. We've made great progress. It seems that in terms of streamlining the permitting process, we've made some advances. I think there's still more work to do. The state is helping us, I think, to some extent by putting a shot clock on building permits for residential projects, and maybe we can challenge ourselves to not only meet that, but meet them for non-residential projects too. I think that would help advance our status as a business-friendly city. there's the flexibility in zoning, and I know that's tied to the general plan, but there are things probably we could be doing now or in the short term before the general plan is revised, not just updated, amended and restated, that specifically, I think with respect to kind of our office, we want to be cautious and prudent about that, but we have a lot of vacant office space still. And I think we're at the point now where we could probably start doing some fortune telling in terms of where that's going. It's probably not more Class A office space, but maybe repurposed office space, not as residential, but other business serving uses. Another area we got an update on our consent calendar with impact fees, but being cognizant of the fees that we adopt and charge, making sure that we're competitive with the other cities in our region in the larger Bay Area, that we're not, unwittingly putting so many fees on top of a new housing unit that we're making the housing unit unaffordable, and that that there's a logic to and a real nexus between the impacts of a development and the fees we're charging. In terms of being, general plan ready, we'll have that discussion, or general plan update, we'll have that discussion in February. On public safety, I appreciated the chief's update in terms of, and the focus of the entire department on retail theft and traffic safety, and some of the kind of the innovative programs, the Peregrine program, the ABLE program that the department is implementing and being the best department in the county, and I think that those programs go along with that. And then just finally on infrastructure, obviously we made we're moving forward at a great speed with some fun, exciting projects in terms of turf, fields at Heather Farm and lights at Tice, and obviously the pool and the community center. One thing that I just want to put on I think we should all be thinking about is the future park planning for Heather Farm, because we will at some point have a pool complex that won't be a pool complex anymore and could be reprogrammed for other interesting recreational endeavors. So at closing, thank you to staff. This is great policy work, and appreciate all the hard work and look forward to our discussion in February.
Thank you. Councilmember DeFinney.
Yeah, thank you, Carla, for that presentation. Thank you to staff, and thank you for the update from the police department on those activities and our progress there. So appreciate that report. I've actually been enjoyed reading our current plan, believe it or not, and going over it chapter by chapter with our city manager, Buckshai. And it's been interesting to me to read about the progress that we've made, at least in the last quarter, where we stand with things. I am also, as Councilmember Silva said, I'm looking forward to the February meeting and our future planning priorities. And I think it's important, as Councilmember Wilk said, it's not that if we have new priorities that the old ones aren't important anymore. It's just we may have subtle ways that we want to start opening some new directions. So, but thank you for the report. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you to everybody that's been involved in this. The priorities are important to us as a city because they're important to our residents. And when I'm out there and speaking at different gatherings, whether it's a few people, one-on-one at farmers market or larger, something in these areas always comes up. And whether it's something that is speeding in a neighborhood, I mean, it's coming up under safety and public safety. So the time that staff puts into this is really critical because this touched on so many different areas that everybody is interested in. And it's great to have the updates, and I appreciate the work that's been done by everybody for the last 2 years. And yeah, we'll see how the next 2 years go.
Yeah, thank you. And I echo my fellow council members. Thanks for all the work that you guys have done. I know giving you 5 priorities was a bit much, and you guys have risen to the task and really taken them and broke them into the pieces and looked at how you can move them forward. And I appreciate the work that you've done, all while you're also doing a housing element and normal day-to-day business. I'm looking forward to the discussion in February. I will be looking at how these individual pieces work, both as themselves, but as part of the bigger whole, how they work in the face of some of the uncertainty that we're facing, both socially through, the changes in homelessness and crime, and also with climate change and the changes from a sustainability perspective, changes in the technology that's available. So there's a lot of work still to be done. I'm looking forward to the February, but you guys have given us a really good, solid baseline of where we are and what we've gotten done. And like Mayor Pro Tem Wilk says, you never get everything done in 2 years, but you guys have done a tremendous amount of work. And so we really appreciate it. So thank you. We will take it under advisement. And now we will take a break before the next item to give everybody time to.
5 or 10.
We'll do 5 minutes. Be back here at 8. I need a tutu.
apologize.
Okay, we will call this meeting back to order, and we'll start the public hearing portion. Ex parte contact disclosure. Anybody have any ex parte contacts on any of these items?
None.
None.
No.
Councilmember DeFinney, have you talked to anybody about via de note or?
No.
Okay, me neither, so we're good to go.
Okay.
Take it away.
All right. Hello and good evening, Mayor Darling, Mayor Pro Tem Wilk, members of the council, public, and staff. My name is Aaron Sage. I'm a principal planner with the Community Development Department. I'll be presenting this item tonight. You heard the Deputy City Manager refer to our housing element implementation, and we've been before you recently on several occasions to make various updates to state laws regarding housing laws. Tonight we're making some updates to state laws regarding a different type of use, family daycare homes, which I'll define shortly. So a few slides on background. As we all know, California has an ongoing statewide shortage of daycare facilities, and one of the key ways that the state legislature has sought to address that shortage is by limiting the types of restrictions that local governments can place on daycare facilities that are operated out of a private home. So state law defines a, quote, family daycare home as a facility that regularly provides care, protection, and supervision for 14 or fewer children in the provider's own home for periods less than 24 hours per day. These, I want to note, are state licensed facilities. There are two key types of family daycare homes. Small family daycare homes are defined as serving 8 or fewer children. And our city code for a number of years has allowed those homes by right, which means that there's no special approvals or permits required. They can simply start operating that use as long as they, again, obtain a state license. The other category is large family daycare homes, and these are defined as serving from 7 to 14 children. And our city code currently states that a large family daycare home permit is required for these large homes. However, that requirement is not being enforced due to state law, which was adopted in 2019 and took effect in 2020. Now that law has some key components that we are addressing with the updates tonight. The first is that no family daycare homes, large or small, can require any discretionary approvals. They must all be allowed by right. No business license fees or taxes may be imposed on this use. And finally, the city cannot impose any restrictions on small or large homes that are not also applied to other residential uses within the same zone. I want to just stress that the city has complied with these requirements since they took effect in state law in 2020. So really what we're doing is updating our code, but we're not changing our practice. We're matching our code to our current practice. So next I'll just summarize the code amendments in the ordinance, and this is not an exhaustive list before you, but these are the key ones. First, we're removing the requirement for the large family daycare home permit, which, as I mentioned, must be allowed by right. We are listing large family daycare homes as a by right use, and that's being listed in all districts where we allow dwelling units, and that's all districts except the business park and the community facilities district. We're updating the use classifications for small and large homes to be consistent with state law, specifically on the number of children, which has changed slightly in recent years. We are amending our business license code to exempt family daycare homes from the requirement for business license, specifically by amending the definition of home-based businesses to include that use. And another item that's not on the slide, but I do want to mention, is that we're amending the parking regulations so that there's no additional parking required for large family daycare homes other than the standard number of spaces that would apply to any single-family home. And again, the why behind these amendments is at the policy level from the state legislature. It's really intended to increase the availability of daycare homes within our community. So staff's recommendation is to waive the reading and introduce the proposed ordinance, to amend the Walnut Creek Municipal Code, to update provisions for family daycare homes to conform to state law, And that recommendation includes changes in the errata sheet that was provided in your packet this evening. Those changes are basically to just fix an inconsistency within the ordinance, so that the summary table that shows all the uses or all the districts includes OSR and HOPD, which were already in the ordinance but not in the summary table. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councilmember Silva?
Thank you very much, Aaron. I appreciate the thoroughness of this, and I know how hard it is to keep up with all of these state law changes. I think sometimes the changes occur before the ink is even dry on something else that they've just done. The couple of questions. You mentioned in your presentation tonight that this state perspective is applicable to state licensed daycare facilities or home-based. What is meant by state licensed, and therefore are there some others that might not have state licenses that these would not be applicable to?
My point in mentioning the state licensing was just that although we're being required to reduce, the number of regulations on these family daycare homes, those homes already and still will continue to require a state license.
So no matter what's the number of children that they are supervising?
That is, yes, if they go from 1 to 14 children, yes.
And by home, we don't mean a single-family house. This is also applicable if someone is caring for children in a townhome or a condo or an apartment?
That's correct. And the recent state law specifically adds that language.
And I sent one question in related to the business park versus housing that might be approved already or in the future in the business park. And I picked the wrong housing project, which I picked Via Monte, which is not an apartment. It is a licensed facility for the adult care, essentially, residential care. At one point, we approved an apartment project for the Shadelands. It has not been built, but we did the approval process, and it wasn't a independent living or senior services. It was completely independent living portion. Would that portion of it then be eligible for? Would residents have the ability to have home daycare in that, even though it's in the it's a planned development in the business park? I think. I mean, I'm not sure what we did. I can't remember.
Yeah, if it is classified as a residential use,
Okay.
Then it would be subject to these restrictions in state law.
And my last question is, why did we maintain the small versus large? And I can't figure out if I have 8 children, if I'm small, because I'm in the 8 or fewer category, or large because I'm in the 7 to 14 category. What do you do about what's the reason for the what's missing that is in one versus the other definition?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the Assistant City Attorney to address that overlap issue in the numbering.
'Cause sometimes that's really confusing.
Good evening. My name is Kimia Mahalati, Assistant City Attorney for the City of Walnut Creek. In answer to your question, so the code that we are proposing to amend does reference the health and safety code sections that do define a small versus a large family daycare home. And so the overlap comes in if it's 1 to 6 children, it's still a small family daycare home subject to those underlying requirements. If the number of children in the home are 6 to 8, then there are additional requirements imposed by the state. So it's things like, at least one child needs to be enrolled in kindergarten or elementary school, and a second child is at least 6 years old. Like, there's very specific requirements if they want to be still considered a small family daycare home, but they have between 6 to 8 children. And then the same goes for, you can be considered a large family daycare home, but if you're going to have 7, then you don't need to abide by those extra requirements, but there's other requirements that the state applies. And so it's Yeah, it's a technicality.
I'm beginning to laugh because what it is a classic example of is they adopt a state law that is inconsistent with another state set of state standards, and this being the health and safety code, because now we have to, they could have made it consistent.
They certainly could have, yes.
Okay.
But yeah, our rationale on keeping that distinction was to simply remain consistent with the state law, and that 6 to 8 versus 12 to 14 small versus large distinction isn't applicable for the city's purposes, but we felt that it was just important to keep that reference to the state law in order to remain consistent.
And those state elements, those elements of state law really reference another, like, county department that gets involved or something like that.
Yeah,
In the licensing.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, not a problem.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we'll open it up for public comment. If anybody in the audience would like to address this issue. Anyone? Anyone? Seeing nobody, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to council.
Move to waive reading and introduce a proposed ordinance amending the Walnut Creek Municipal Code to update provisions for family daycare homes to conform to state law, including the changes on the errata sheet provided this evening.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Davini.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Welk.
Aye.
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your work on making this consistent with state law. So now we will move to our next hearing item, the Planning Commission, appeal of the Planning Commission decision to revoke the ADUP for Dia Inoche.
Hello again. I just couldn't stay away. So again, my name is Kimia Mahalati. I am the Assistant City Attorney for the City of Walnut Creek, and I will be presenting this item before you this evening. I do have members of the staff with me, so I've got Captain Ryan Hibbs. Where did he go? There he is, from the Police Department, as well as Chip Griffin from Planning, and so they will be available after the presentation to answer any questions. The first thing I do want to mention before we get started, and as soon as I find my place in my binder, is that the city did receive correspondence from the appellant business owner, Jose Ruffridge, which has been included as part of the record. He will not be able to attend this evening. And so with that, I will proceed with our presentation. So what brings us here this evening is the appellant, Jose Ruffridge, owner of Dia Inoche Restaurant, has appealed the Planning Commission's November 14th decision to revoke the AUP for the location at 1411 Locust Street. And so Community Development Department's request is that the council review the operation of Dia Inoche for conformance with the conditions of approval in the AUP. To take public testimony and make written findings that Dia Inoche is operating in violation of the conditions of approval of its AUP, and to adopt a resolution that denies the appeal of the Planning Commission's action and affirms the revocation of Dia Inoche's AUP, which would require them to cease the sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages at this location. And just to orient us with the site, the eating and drinking establishment, Dia Inoche, is located at 1411 Locust Street in Walnut Creek, along the west side of Locust Street. It's between a 3-story mixed-use building to the north and a vacant corner lot to the south. The establishment includes 2,565 square feet of interior dining with a 661 square foot outdoor area. The total occupancy is 161 persons, with 147 persons indoor and 14 outdoor. Dia Inoche currently operates under a Type 47 license, which is for on-sale beer, wine, and distilled spirits as an eating place, and it received that license from the State Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control for on-site sales and consumption of alcoholic beverages. The hours of operation from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. And the general plan designation would be pedestrian retail, and it is zoned under pedestrian retail as well. So a brief entitlement history of this location. So prior to the operation of the restaurant Dia y Noche, the business Redux Lounge had been operating from approximately 1988 to 2016. In 2012, Redux Lounge operated under a deemed approved status that was operating at this location. And in 2016, the Planning Commission found Redux Lounge to be operating as a public nuisance in violation of the deemed approved performance standards. And so the Planning Commission thereby revoked the deemed approved status of Redux Lounge, and that immediately stopped the ability of the establishment to sell alcoholic beverages at this location. So as a result, any operator of an establishment at this address that wished to reestablish the ability to sell and serve alcoholic beverages would need to apply for an administrative use permit if alcoholic beverage service were to end on or before 11 p.m. There's also the option of applying for a conditional use permit if service was to end after 11 p.m. As set forth in the municipal code. And so in July of 2017, the city granted an AUP to Urban Alley / 310 Eatery, as it was called at the time, to serve alcoholic beverages to its patrons at 1411 Locust Street. And this should say 1411 Locust Street, not 1520, so I do apologize about that. So that AUP was granted and has been included as part of the agenda packet as attachment 3, which was the Planning Commission agenda packet. The hours of operation set forth in that business plan were various times that you see up here. I won't bore you by reading it out loud. It's not clear exactly when Urban Alley ceased operations at this location, but we do know that it was some point between July 2017 and January 2020, because in January 2020, Dia y Noche submitted an application for an AUP. And so even though this location already had an AUP, there were substantial changes being made to the mode or character of operation at this existing alcoholic beverage establishment, and our code requires that the establishment must first modify any existing AUP if any of these substantial changes in mode or character of operation are being requested. And so in this instance, the application was submitted to amend the AUP for the service, sale, and consumption of alcohol at this location because there was a proposed change in the hours of operation from the hours listed previously, which had various closing times ending at 9 p.m., 8 p.m., 11:30 p.m., to Monday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. full stop. And there was also a proposal to include live entertainment from Thursdays through Saturdays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. And so accordingly, in March 2020, the city approved this application under AUP number 20010. And so the granting of this AUP superseded the prior AUP because the subject AUP is still inclusive of the prior hours of operation that were granted under the previous AUP. And so this AUP number 20010 is the operative AUP, and that's the AUP that is the subject of this hearing. And just to provide everyone with a visual reference, this is the floor plan that Dia y Noche submitted as part of their business application, along with their proposed hours of operation and hours for live entertainment. So November 14th, 2024, about a month ago, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to assess the operations of Dia y Noche under its AUP with the potential to modify or revoke the permit, which would affect the establishment's ability to sell and serve alcohol. Staff's original recommendation was to revoke the AUP. Testimony was received from the owner, Jose Ruffridge, on behalf of Dia y Noche. I do want to quickly specify that this is the owner of the business and not the owner of the property. However, revoking the AUP from this location would mean that any establishment that would come after would have to reapply for an AUP. And so So testimony was received from the owner, Jose Ruffridge, on behalf of Dia y Noche. And I wanted to note that during the hearing, the Planning Commission noted the owner's lack of communications with the city staff to address the AUP violations that he had been made aware of, with the city sending of a first notice of violation letter and a second notice of violation letter and a notice for public hearing, which I will get into in a little bit more detail shortly. The Planning Commission also noted the closeness and proximity of the violations, and by that I mean how often they occurred and how close to each other that they occurred. Sometimes it was violations noted every weekend, sometimes twice in one weekend. So those things were noted by the Planning Commission. And when asked by the members of the Planning Commission about these deficiencies, Mr. Ruffridge simply wasn't able to provide any direct responses to the questions. He, in fact, repeatedly made statements that he wasn't even aware of the existence of an AUP for this business's location, despite the fact that his name was on the application for the subject AUP, and despite his acknowledgement of receiving those two notice of violation letters that I mentioned previously that do refer to the conditions of approval that were set forth in his AUP. And those notice letters also included copies of the AUP. No other public comments were received, and following the review, the Planning Commission unanimously adopted Resolution number 3973, which revoked the AUP and made it so that the business had to cease the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol at this site, as the business was found to be operating in violation of the conditions of approval. And on November 26th, within the 10-day appeal period, the business owner, Jose Ruffridge, did file an appeal to challenge the Planning Commission's November 14th decision on the basis that he believed the decision was unfair and that he had plans to make the business better and more family-oriented and better for our community. The letter does not, or this appeal doesn't provide any additional information as to how the business owner intends on doing so. And so, as we know, the granting of an AUP does not come without conditions, and so for our purposes tonight, we'll be reviewing the conditions of approval. Anytime an appeal is made of a Planning Commission decision with regards to an entitlement, the hearing is conducted de novo, and so we do have to make these findings again. And so this subject AUP consists of a total of 21 conditions. We will not be going through all of them. We will only be going through the two that are relevant here. The first one is condition number 3, which states that no alcohol shall be sold, served, or consumed on the premises after 11 p.m. daily. And the second one that is of concern for us tonight is condition number 7, which states that the proposed use shall not create objectionable conditions that constitute a nuisance. So now diving into the data. Since December of 2023, there have been 59 total calls for service at Dia y Noche that have required some response or attention by the police department. And that is listed in the calls for service chart that was originally included as attachment 5 in the Planning Commission staff report, which I believe is attachment 3 in tonight's agenda. Of these 59 events, a total of 23 violations of the AUP's conditions of approval have occurred. This data is gathered from 16 police reports that were generated by PD's responses, and some of these incidents consist of more than one type of AUP violation that may have occurred during one incident. For example, there might have been an instance of excessive noise, which would be one violation, and alcohol consumption after 11 p.m., which would be another AUP violation. And so to break it down, these 23 violations consist of 14 alcohol-related violations. That is, PD observed Dia y Noche to be serving, selling, or allowing the consumption of alcohol past 11 p.m. 14 different times. There are 5 excessive noise violations, 4 public intoxication violations were noted. Of these observed public intoxication violations, there were 3 instances in which the owner himself, Jose Ruffridge, displayed signs of alcohol intoxication, and there was actually 1 instance in which he was arrested for public intoxication on September 6th of this year. let's see. And also of the 14 alcohol-related violations, there were 3 instances in which alcohol was served past 2 a.m., which is also in violation of California state law. And so there were also several instances in which PD either had to directly respond either multiple times in one night or, as I stated, observed multiple violations at different points through the night. All this to say that scaling back their hours in the AUP for alcohol service, sale, or consumption simply wouldn't work because there are a number past California closing times. There are majority of them are past 11 p.m. violations, and it simply shows a pattern of bad management and bad business practices. There are also a number of other violations not having to do with alcohol being served past 11 p.m. There are enough instances of operating in violation of condition number 7 to indicate that this is not just an hours of operations issue, but also a public health and safety issue. And so another thing that was of great concern to staff and the Planning Commission was the fact that out of the 23 total AUP violations, 7 were recorded before the first notice of violation letter was issued on, I believe that was June 26, 2024. After the issuance of the notice of violation letter, the first one, which gave the owner notice that they had been observed to be operating in violation of their conditions of approval, that number rose to 16. So PD was responding to and documenting AUP violations at Dia y Noche pretty much every weekend after that, sometimes twice in one weekend. And so again, this quite straightforwardly shows a pattern of bad management and bad business practices. Dia y Noche had almost 5 months after it was put on notice to change their business practices and correct any errors, but instead there was a significantly higher number of violations documented after the first notice of violation letter was issued. That's almost 70% of the total number of documented AUP violations. Here are some graphic representations of PD's responses to Dia y Noche in comparison to other similar establishments based off of that same range of data that is from December 2023 to the present. And so Dia y Noche, the number here is reflected off of the number of police reports that were generated. So Dia y Noche is 16. You'll see Fuego is 3. Mr. Lucky's is 0. Elia is 3, Dan's has 0, Modern China has 2. So it's a total of 24 generated reports, and Dia y Noche by far carries the vast majority of them. So to summarize the timeline of communications that the city has had with the business, and the events that have taken place during that time. So as I said, the first notice of violation letter notifying them that they've been operating in violation of their AUP conditions was issued on June 26th. After that, as I said, PD documented 16 additional AUP violations. On October 30th, the second notice of violation letter was issued, and this also provided a notice of a public hearing before the Planning Commission to consider modification or revocation of their AUP. After the second notice of violation letter was issued, Jose Ruffridge contacted city staff a couple of times to ask questions about the upcoming Planning Commission proceedings. He also complained that he felt his September 6th arrest was unjustified. It should be noted that prior to the November 14th Planning Commission hearing, staff didn't receive any communications from Mr. Ruffridge that would show any indication that he meant to address the AUP violations or anything that would indicate he wanted to maintain compliance with the conditions set forth in the AUP moving forward. So after the Planning Commission hearing, which as we know, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to revoke the AUP, the owner, Jose Ruffridge, submitted the timely appeal, and since then he has once again only had limited communications with staff that have merely related to factual questions about the appeal process, He has not relayed any productive communications or proposed actions to address these violations. I do also want to mention that city staff did also receive communications from the owner of the property's counsel, Mr. Bob Sinclair, is an attorney who was maintained by the owner of the property, and he reached out to inform us that Jose Ruffridge on October 30th, which coincidentally happened to be the same day that the city issued the notice of violation, the second notice of violation letter, that he had been evicted from the business, and so because of a non-payment of rent. And so on that day, they had received an order from the County of Contra Costa in order to evict the premises with the county sheriff's office. And so the lawyer also submitted a letter to the council, which is included in your agenda packet this evening, to inform the council of that action. They said that they would not likely be showing up this evening, and I do not see them here this evening, so I think, unless they are, no, okay. So, but that's it. As far as communications with the business owner goes, no productive communications to address these violations. So the city's code requires that whenever an entity wants to make a finding of modifying or revoking the permit or entitlement, be it the Planning Commission or, in this instance, the City Council, there's a set of findings that the body may make, and for our purposes, the two up here are relevant tonight, and that would be, one, a finding that the use or user is in violation of the conditions of approval of the permit, including but not limited to the municipal code. And then the second finding would be the use is being conducted contrary to the public health, safety, and welfare. And so recalling the data from the previous slides that document the AUP violations, that data was used as evidence to support the findings listed here. And so for the first finding of the user being in violation of a condition of approval of the entitlement or other laws or regulations, condition of approval number 3 and number 7 of the AUP are relevant here. Specifically, condition number 3, the number of documented AUP violations, and the also number of the violations of California state law are relevant here, as well as the excessive noise complaints, the public intoxication violations. Those are all relative for making this first finding. And for the second finding, many of these violations have occurred, as I noted, within a short span of time and in close proximity with each other. And despite the city's many attempts to communicate with the business owner to correct these violations, the city simply hasn't seen any actions or changes in mode of operation or conduct to indicate that the business owner is interested in maintaining compliance with their AUP. And so, given the repeated responses to the business by PD, the fact that 16 additional AUP violations occurred subsequent to the city's issuance of the first notice of violation letter, Mr. Ruffridge's lack of productive communications with staff to attempt to maintain compliance with the AUP, the business has simply shown that it's unable to abide by the conditions set by the AUP. These violations exhibit safety issues for patrons and the general public, as well as the welfare of the surrounding area, and thus both the nature of Dia y Noche's AUP violations and the closeness of proximity of the violations indicate that the use and operation of Dia y Noche is being conducted in a manner that is contrary to the public health, peace, safety, and welfare of the persons residing and traveling in the area. And so, again, as a reminder, the Planning Commission's findings were that Dia y Noche is operating in violation of the AUP's conditions of approval, and that Dia y Noche is operating contrary to the public health, safety, and welfare. And so staff's recommendation this evening is to adopt a resolution denying the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to revoke the AUP for Dia y Noche, and thereby upholding the revocation of the AUP. So this action would cease the sale of alcoholic beverages at this address until another AUP or CUP for the sale, service, and alcoholic beverages would be granted. And it would have to be an application by whichever business establishment takes over at this location, not just for the business owner, Jose Ruffridge of Dia y Noche. And the effective date of this decision would be immediately following the City Council's decision. There would be no further opportunity for an appeal within the city's process. And so with that, I will open up the floor to questions or comments. And I've also got Chip Griffin over here and Captain Hibbs back there, who will, I'm sure, run to the podium.
Thank you guys for a very thorough report. I will turn to Councilmember Francois to start the questions.
Well, thank you, Kimmy, and welcome. Great report. Followed everything it was very clear and well laid out. So thank you for your diligence in putting that together.
Thank you.
You know, in items like this, where it's before us because it's an appeal from a planning commission action. And so I always like to look at the appeal form and any correspondence that was, put forth in the form that says, here's how the planning commission got it wrong, and you need to reverse them. And the only thing I see on the form here is what is you reported and what's in the staff report, that it wasn't fair without any elaboration. Is it true that we did not receive any other correspondence explaining the basis for the appeal, or how it was unfair and what is being sought from the council?
That is correct. That is the extent of the reasoning behind the appeal.
Okay. And then, so, I'm concerned by a lot of things with this, including the multiple violations and the increase in violations after the first notice of violation, which seems like it should have been taken very seriously. I'm also concerned that multiple violations were not just of our conditions, but of state law for serving alcohol after 2 a.m. Do those, and maybe it's a question for the police department, but do those get reported to ABC and the state somehow in terms of this operator and that they violated state law and the requirements for serving after 2 a.m.?
Yes, it's a good question. I will turn it over to Captain Hibbs.
Good evening, Mayor Darling, Mayor Pro Tem Wilk, council, staff. Ryan Hibbs, Operations Captain, Police Department. To answer your question, Councilman Francois, that is correct. We've worked with ABC closely. Every one of the violations that you've been made aware of tonight has been reported to ABC, and they have an open investigation.
That's helpful. Is that, can you speak to, I know we had a downtown bar owners association that meets with representatives of Walnut Creek downtown and with the police department to kind of stave off any issues or problems that could arise. Was this operator, did they ever participate in those meetings as far as you know?
Not as far as I'm aware, but, okay. And I'm being told they attended one meeting.
Okay. Comparatively speaking, it seems like, obviously, almost 60 calls for service in a one-year period seems like a lot. For a comparable business, how many calls, comparable bar/restaurant, how many calls for service are you typically seeing?
Typically for that type of period, we'll see between, let's say, 40 to 50 over the course of a year. Sometimes it's just all-encompassing in downtown, so it's not necessarily to a specific business. These were mostly violations that were on-viewed by our officers who were already on foot downtown.
So it wasn't necessarily, the volume seems high, but maybe not completely out of whack. But what was different, and I think Kimmy pointed this out with a slide, were the number of violations.
That's correct.
That resulted. Okay. And then did the owner ever reach out to you or any of the downtown officers to talk about what was going on at the restaurant or how they could change things or address the violations?
Mr. Ruffridge did reach out to me. I spoke with him this afternoon. The second half of your question is that conversation did not include measures that he could take to solidify a better business plan or become a better actor.
Okay. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Silva?
Thank you very much. Thanks to both the city attorney staff and to the police department, and the Downtown Business Association I know is well represented back there, so I'm sure we'll hear from you all. So sometimes these things are a bit confusing because the entity that requests the administrative use permit is the business operator, owner, yet they, in this case, as in many cases, the operator of the business is different from the owner of the property.
Correct.
Yet the administrative use permit actually goes with the property, so we're in this conundrum of he's lost his lease, I presume, because he's been locked out. It is locked up tighter than a drum. I walked by it this morning and it looks a little dark. So what are we really being asked to do? Because these are serious violations, so I'll go to a different question. The violations, okay, let's say there's a new potential operator that would get a lease from the property owner. What is the ABC going to require for a new business to serve alcohol? I've seen the signs on the doors and the windows. It seems that they have to go through a process even if they change their business name and it's the same person. Am I misreading those signs?
No, and it's a great question. The answer is it depends, and it depends on who's on the license and who was taken to sanction for violating the conditions of the ABC license. In this case, the owner of the business is not on the ABC license.
Who's on the ABC license?
I don't remember the name off the top of my
But it's somebody from a previous, that's the other thing going on with you actually just keep reading. If you only go back to 2012, you're like, there's a revolving door going on here. And a sliding door is the entrance. So that the irony, it doesn't escape me.
I see what you did there.
But other establishments in this community with even later bar hours have consistent ownership of the property and consistent ownership of the business. This seems to have inconsistency.
I would agree.
So what are we really being asked to do here tonight? Because the owner is out of business. If he has no location for a business, he's effectively out of business, is he not?
Correct, and I'm going to turn the rest of that over to...
So I want to know is what can we do to the owner of the business to preclude him, if we so desired, to come back under a different name and in this location or another location? And what can we do to protect the property owner and the property and the community from the next business just picking up and proceeding forward?
So I'll work a little bit backwards from your question. So the second part of your question referred to the property owner, and the property owner is the same property owner, which I believe you actually pointed out, Councilmember Silva, as the property owner when Redux Lounge was in operation. And so it seems that we're also seeing a pattern of this property owner not picking exactly the best tenants for their building, and so there is merit to having a conversation with the property owner should this owner obtain a new tenant for this property, and if a new AUP application were to be submitted for this property, that record would be there in front of the Planning Commission, or in this case, if it was an AUP, it would be in front of the Community Development Department as they approve these permit applications. And so, Chip, if you have anything else to add to it, okay.
So if we did nothing tonight and didn't revoke the AUP on the property effectively, then a new business owner could come in and just pick up where they left off?
That is correct.
And if we revoke the AUP, a new business owner will be required to come through this process. And are we allowed to make it harder to get an AUP, or do we just have to follow the same rules of which they go through? It's administrative, they go to the planning department, and we keep our fingers crossed?
I mean, if I could jump in on there, because I think it'd be helpful to maybe, and we had some public comment on this as well, about the amount of police resources that were being devoted to this establishment, to have a refresher, quite a little primer on kind of the revisions that we made, I don't know, 10 years ago now in terms of the permitting process for alcohol establishments.
Correct. The council did.
Okay, I'll ask that question.
Yeah, so the council did modify the regulations previously and made the process for consideration of AUPs more administrative and delegated down to the Community Development Department. So if the council were to revoke the AUP, to uphold the Planning Commission's determination to revoke, then any new business that would go in there and that would want to serve alcohol at that location, it doesn't matter what the business is, would have to get a new AUP. They'd have to go through that process, which is the process that the city has established now. There was a question about whether you could make it harder to get an AUP. That would require an amendment by the council to the city's process. So right now, if you revoke this evening, there's no AUP associated with that property. It's removed as a right, and anybody who comes in would have to get a new AUP. If you want to make it harder, we'd have to come back with an amendment to the codes.
They would have to come in and get a discretionary permit from the city. They couldn't sell alcohol up to 11 p.m. without some sort of permit from the city.
That is correct.
That the Planning Commission can impose, or staff can impose conditions on.
That's correct.
It's staff, not, is it staff or is it the Planning Commission?
At the initial level of the AUP, it's staff.
Staff.
So at the AUP level, it's staff, which is alcohol service until 11 p.m. But after 11 p.m., then it requires a conditional use permit, which goes to the Planning Commission for.
And this AUP that was issued in early 2020 was for up to 11 p.m., and we've had this level of challenges.
Correct. And
We
in
need to
a
get
go
a better clock.
forward, so, as part of the process, there's scrutiny that happens with regard to the police department, looking at records and so forth, and then also within the community development department to try and do our best to ensure that these situations don't happen. But when they do, this is the process that we need to go through in order to remedy it.
And again, circling back to the ABC license, you can't, our hours are irrelevant if you can't get an ABC license.
That's correct. You need an ABC license to be able to serve alcohol.
And for that other portion of the primer, just because the state law says you can serve alcohol up to 2 a.m. because we're considered a saturated community, we have, I don't know, it's some formula. We have a lot of alcohol serving businesses. Then the ABC also asks us to weigh in and set the hours.
That is correct, and if Captain Hibbs wants to add to that, but that's correct. We do have what's referred to, I think, as an oversaturated area, and that's really just an indication that you have a larger number of alcohol serving establishments in a smaller area.
I've got a question regarding alcohol specifically. We see different licenses. Some of them are full alcohol license with spirits. Others are just beer and wine. A lot of those are restaurants. When we're talking about an AUP, that covers all beer and wine as well?
That's correct.
And so...
And to be clear, if I can just add to that, the city is acting in its regulatory land use capacity, so we're saying you can either serve alcohol or not until 11 o'clock. The type of alcohol that is served is an ABC license determination.
So are we, and I guess this may be for staff more than either, should we uphold the Planning Commission decision on this and reject the appeal? Are we putting a hardship on a potential good actor restaurant to be able to operate a business there?
Staff does not believe that you are, because you have an AUP process that people can apply through. It's administrative, it's at the staff level, and it allows us to impose appropriate conditions on that use. So this hearing that we have before us tonight is because they violated those conditions. We said they couldn't serve after 11, you couldn't have public intoxication, et cetera. And so we don't believe that's an undue burden to place on even a new business that would come in. All of your other businesses downtown that are not deemed approved already have complied with that process, and the folks from WCD may want to speak more to that issue, but from a staff perspective, we do not think that's an undue burden. And as the council will recall, going back to an earlier question, the process we have in place right now is actually is more streamlined than it used to be. So this is more business friendly, if you will, than what existed previously.
So there's several new businesses downtown that previously were just retail, nothing to do with food or alcohol, and now they are serving some alcohol. And this would be similar, just normal standard operating procedure for applying for an AUP. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember DeFinney, did you have any questions?
I was curious about the oversaturation issue. So if, state law allows alcohol to be served until 2 a.m., but we're designated oversaturated, so then does everybody who gets an ABC license start off at the 11 p.m. then in Walnut Creek? Is that our standard operating?
So the city has two types of permits: the alcohol use permit, which is 11 p.m. cutoff time for alcohol sales, service, and consumption across the board. And then there's also a conditional use permit for those establishments that want to serve past 11 p.m., and they may be allowed to serve up until 2 a.m. depending on whether or not the Planning Commission allows for it. And it's been the city's practice to first have a business establishment if they want to sell past 11 p.m., they still have to, it's been the city's practice to grant them an AUP first and see how they do, see how well they are able to abide by the conditions of approval set forth in an AUP. Okay, can you abide by the conditions up until 11 p.m.? Okay, then we give them a chance to set a record that speaks for themselves, and then the applicant can come back after some time and then apply for a CUP if they wish to extend those hours of service.
What do we usually, is that 6 months, a year, 2 years? What's the normal for that?
It varies depending on the types of the use, and I would just add to the categories that Camille is talking about. The city also has some businesses in the downtown that are called deemed approved businesses, and they're businesses that have had the right to sell alcohol later for a long time, and so the city recognized that right. They're still subject to the requirement that they don't operate their business in a manner that constitutes a nuisance, but there are businesses, and I don't know, Ryan, if you can speak to how many there are, but there are some businesses downtown, or Erica, if you or your staff
And
can.
this
some that
one
are deemed
was Redux. That was a deemed approved
It was,
business
yeah, and
before 2016.
And if I may, if I could just add to your question there, Councilmember DeVinny. So the standard process, as our attorney noted here, is to start with an administrative use permit that allows until 11, generally for about a year or so. But we do have some exceptions to that. And actually, there were a few recently that were granted conditional use permits that are new businesses to operate later. And that's because they are operated by managers or owners who have an established track record of running a good business with other businesses here in Walnut Creek or in other cities, and therefore they were allowed to operate and sell alcohol later than 11 p.m. from the start.
Okay.
But that's more the exception than the rule.
Okay. And then is there a cap on how many licenses can be sold in Walnut Creek or in the downtown area? Are there limits on that? Are these considered like a commodity, right? Like you might at some point reach that point and new businesses wouldn't be able to have them?
Yeah, they are transferred from one to another, but maybe the chief can speak really a little bit more to the oversaturation issue.
Sure. Jamie Knox, Chief of Police. So initially up front, what occurs is anytime a business wants to sell alcohol, they will apply for an ABC license. That application is then sent to the police chief of that municipality, and typically we designate that. In this case, it's our investigations commander. We do an analysis of crime in the area, and it depends on the license type. But we've generally been very pro-business. So yes, we would be considered oversaturated, but a majority of the licenses are not, bars serving till 2 a.m. A majority of the licenses are restaurant establishments. But the first step is to have the chief of the municipal government approve that ABC license, and it's got to be transferred to their name. In this particular case, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that this current ABC license is not even in Mr. Ruffordge's name. It's in someone else's name. So they never went through the proper license transfer at the state level.
And if I recall right, the oversaturation means that ABC probably won't issue any more Type 41s. They're just 47s here. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. It's really, they really leave it up to the entity to make that decision. And, you know, I've worked at 5 different cities, and 4 cities have an involvement in something like this. They typically will notice you that, hey, you have quite a few, especially if they're liquor stores or on-sale bars that serve until 2 a.m., and they'll list the other types. And, yeah, there's a general rule of thumb. You know, you typically don't want, you know, 4 or 5 in a 1-block radius, but they really leave it up to the discretion of the chief.
But we haven't had any new Type 41 licenses
No,
for a long
that's
time.
correct.
All right, any more questions? Speaking of Type 41s, my only question is the Type 47 license for this spot still in force, or has it been revoked? Do we know?
At the state level,
Yeah.
there's an open investigation. They just work a little slower than we do.
That's what I thought. All right. Well, thank you. I think that's it for questions now. We'll open it up to public comment and then bring it back to the council. Anyone?
Good evening, Mayor Darlene. Kathy Hemingway, Executive Director with the Walnut Creek Downtown Association. We've had this business contact our office regularly beyond this particular incident or list of incidents. And at this point, with the Walnut Creek Downtown's stance on this particular situation, while we are very pro-business and we want all of our businesses to succeed, our feeling right now is that the safety of the public and the downtown employees and even DIE Noche's employees is what's most important, and we're in support of the revocation. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing nothing else.
Madam Mayor, if I may just add one more comment too, because the council did receive that communication from Mr. Ruffordge tonight that he was not able to attend the meeting. As some of the council members are aware, because you've watched the Planning Commission meeting, maybe all of you have, Mr. Ruffordge did speak for 15 minutes at the Planning Commission and had the opportunity to lay out all of his rationale for the reasons why he thought that the AUP should not be revoked, and the Planning Commission did consider that. That's part of your administrative record as well tonight. He did not, as Camilla has indicated, he did not at all address the specific issues beyond generalizations about doing better. There was no specific plan, as we have seen from other restaurants and bars that have been ultimately brought before the City Council or the Planning Commission, where they came in with a plan of action to make changes. Mr. Ruffordge never offered any of those. And so I would just share with the council that there's been ample opportunity for his side of the story to have been presented to the public hearing process.
I think what you're saying is he was given an opportunity. We have a complete record that includes all of his information, and we have all considered.
That's correct. And he was aware of this meeting since the meeting was noticed. So he's known that it's been on calendar since we issued the meeting notice.
Okay. Thank you. Bring it back to council. Councilmember Francois, if you want to start.
I appreciate the amount of staff time that went into this, the diligence that went into documenting all the violations, the police department for being there as many times as they were. I'm concerned when I hear that, because I know then you're not out in the neighborhoods or out downtown or making sure that the downtown's safe for people that are just going out to eat dinner or shop or spend some time with family. So I think that given the volume in terms of the number of violations that we've received, the seriousness of the violations, public intoxication by the owner and an arrest for that, plus violations of state law by selling alcohol after 2 a.m. Are very concerning to me and troubling. I think that There were numerous opportunities for this owner to rectify the situation after the first violation, and the number of violations increased. There was an opportunity for the owner to lay out in the appeal documentation why it was he felt that the Planning Commission didn't reach the right decision, and we don't have that. We don't have any really rationale or reason why we should take any action other than what seems to me to be a very prudent, reasonable action by a unanimous Planning Commission to revoke the AUP. You know, I would encourage, having been on the Planning Commission before the council, we've dealt with one on the council, a deemed approved, I think it was deemed approved, relatively recently, that there's a lot of value that I place in those quarterly downtown meetings that most bar owners participate in regularly with Walnut Creek Downtown and the police department, and it helps resolve a lot of issues. And I think I would encourage every bar operator in Walnut Creek to do that, but to the extent that they don't, then we will do our job, and the police will do their job in terms of documenting the violations and issuing the notices of violation. So I'm in support of the Planning Commission action and will be voting to deny the appeal and uphold the revocation of the AUP.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Councilmember DeFinney, and then
Thank you, Camilla, for that presentation. It was very thorough. And thank you to the Planning Commission for seeing this, the Police Department for addressing these issues, and I want to also thank the Walnut Creek Downtown Association for sticking it out through this whole meeting so that they could be here and support the betterment of the downtown, and it definitely shows your commitment to that, so I appreciate you being here. I am also in favor of upholding the Planning Commission's position for many of the reasons just stated, and so I'll leave it at that.
thank you. Councilmember Silva?
Thank you again to our City Attorney's Office, our Planning Department, and our Police Department for all of the work you've had to put in on this. We are a pro-business community, and to be a pro-business community doesn't mean you allow anybody to do anything they want anytime, anywhere. It means that you have to expect business operators to uphold reasonable operating requirements so that it's a level playing field and a fairness and safe for the community and other business owners. Last Friday night, my husband and I were downtown having dinner, and a restaurant owner, longtime restaurant owner, came out from the kitchen in the middle of Friday dinner and said, "Cindy, I need to talk to you. You need to revoke that AUP because it is unfair what's going on. It is disruptive." And despite repeated attempts on that property owner and business owner's efforts to get the behavior to change, it was ignored. So even the business community reaching out has been to no avail. It is appropriate to require this business to operate with the same operating standards as the other business that are restaurants, because this is not a bar, by the way. This is not a type 41. Am I going to quote my number right? It's a type 47. It's supposed to be serving food at a 40% level. It's not supposed to be making its money off the till and a dance club. And that's more of what was going on. So it is only business, a pro-business stance is to revoke the AUP and to hope that the property owner, in this case, will find a better tenant.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you to everyone that for your input on this, from our city staff and the city attorney's office, the police department. I've been hearing about this business for a year and a half of problems that were happening there. And the police were on it then. They were talking to, I believe they were talking to the owner or management there. And so this is not something that is done just knee-jerk, and we're going to look at this for a week and then we're going to make a decision. There's months and months and months, and in this case, well over a year of reports on this. And dozens of reports to the extent that any manager of an establishment, certainly an owner, is going to recognize that and realize they have to take action. We've had things come to the council before with another nighttime establishment where in many cases the owner wasn't on premises and there were problems that occurred frequently. We do want business here, and I really appreciate the fact that Walnut Creek is really the only city within about a 10-mile radius that has an active nightlife. And that's great because kids that are children, once they're in their 20s, they don't have to necessarily go to Oakland or San Francisco. They can stay local. Uber is really easy. And so the fact that we have these opportunities here, I think it's a good thing. We don't want Walnut Creek to shut down at 8 o'clock and that's it. But we have to have good operators here. And when good operators aren't here, then there's a domino effect. We get worse actors that come in, we get difficult crowds, we get problems, the police are involved, and we don't have an unlimited amount of police that are available. We have those that are on duty at night. We have more on the weekend nights. But if they're constantly at one or two establishments only, then they're not in the other areas downtown protecting people, and they're not even able to be in the rest of the city in the neighborhoods. So I do appreciate the work that's been done. This is, I think in my opinion, this is something that is as egregious as I've seen. There's no way that we can have an operator that has continuously, flagrantly violated our own city regulations and state law. That just isn't going to happen in Walnut Creek. Those restaurants and establishments that serve alcohol at night here, that are looking for a nighttime crowd to come, please take notice of this. We will hold you accountable. And I will be voting to uphold the Planning Commission decision as well.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody here tonight. It's always a tough one when we have to deal with one of these. And so I want to, since some business owners might be watching this because they're curious what this was about, I want to get the message out. It is not just calls for service that leads to where we are tonight. It's calls for service with no follow-up with the city, with the police department about what can I do better? I had a problem last night. What can I do? How can I do better? And that's Councilmember Francois urging people to work with Walnut Creek Downtown, work with the police department. Don't follow the siren song of, if you sell a lot of alcohol, yes, you can make a lot of money, but it's not what a Type 47 license is. It's not what the city of Walnut Creek is looking for. We are looking for places that are lively nighttime venues, but retain that character and don't push the public safety so far off the edge. So if you're getting attention, get help. And we are always willing to do that. And with that, I'm going to move to adopt the resolution denying an appeal of the Planning Commission's action and affirming the revocation of the AUP for Dia y Noche.
Second.
Roll call?
Mayor Darling.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Devaney.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you for all your efforts.